Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of the UK Sim Racing Community Multiclass League Season 3 as sponsored by Virtual Racing School, that's VRS, and brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. It is round 4 of the championship, and after 3 weeks of intense racing, we've seen some stars and we've seen some heroes, and other drivers go from hero to zero very rapidly. But here we are in Italy for the Imola Circuit. Known in full as the Autodrome International Enzo Edino Ferrari, is a circuit stapled in motorsport in history. Some of it's sad, some of it's standing proud, and some of the prouder moments include in what has been some of the defining races of many a racing driver's career, including the likes of Fernando Alonso taking victory over Michael Schumacher in his early years with Renault in order to make his way towards what would be his 2 eventual Formula 1 titles. At its core is a circuit that has evolved over its extensive history from what was a very fast-flowing circuit with many a high-speed sweeper and a lack of heavy braking zones into a circuit today. There's a series of contradictions, with its chicanes being stapled in sharp contrast to its extended straights. Is a circuit where overtaking can prove very tricky and run all the way from the exit of one corner to the next corner sequence, albeit interrupted by a heavy braking zone where it'll be a duel on the brakes, and that's where we'll see the finest of our multi-class racing action take place, much like in reality with the World Endurance Championship, which is racing at the circuit coincidentally this weekend. But as we welcome you to this live broadcast from circuit side, you can be tuning in via one of 2 media platforms to your viewing pleasure. You could be tuning in via currently what will be the official UK Sim Racing YouTube channel, and that's on youtube.com, and search for UK Sim Racing and UKSR, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via YouTube. Alternatively, you could be tuning in via Twitch at twitch.tv/UK Sim Racing, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch. Now, regardless of what platform you're on, all your race commentary is going to be brought to you live from circuit side today in what is this live broadcast, and in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your racing action as it unfolds. But what a season we've had so far, and to give you a quick recap of the season so far and what we've still got lying in wait, of course there are plenty of rounds on the calendar. Well, let's take a look at that schedule, and as we can see, today is the 20th of April. It's Easter Sunday in the countries that do observe Easter Sunday, and as our drivers roar the way into Easter, we've had 3 opening rounds which have been 3 very different stories. In the opener at the Autodrome International du Algarve, it was all about survival in very slippery and treacherous conditions on the 30th of March. And the Fuji International Speedway, it was all about a circuit that started off wet but was drying rapidly as the racing went on the 6th of April in Japan. And last time out in the United States of America for the first of our 4 visits to the US of A, we were in the US state of California, and on the West Coast it was a roar around the enclosed street circuit of Long Beach, where we got to see in the Acura Grand Prix circuit some brilliant battles and also some sharp and sudden and decisive moments, perhaps none more so than Øystein Herfjord's LMP2 victory, suddenly crumbling away in the closing laps and handing over to James Ibram, with the LMP2 driver in the wall right at the close, and Herfjord ruined what could have been a perfect day in the Californian sun. But that was on the 13th of April, and we're here today in Italy, commencing a double header that takes us into what will be our break week, with the 20th of April today being the Autodrome International Enzo Edino Ferrari, or Imola. And after our mid-season break week, we will be returning for round number 5 of the championship at the Autodrome National Monza, local to the circuit of course, and that will be on the 4th of May. The 2 neighbouring circuits there, the 2 stars of the Italian country, albeit Italy's got plenty of other circuits out there, but they're going to be our stars for this season. And after round number 5, we'll be making our way to the United States of America for the WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca, back to the US state of California on the 11th of May. On the 18th of May, we'll be making our way to the US state of Georgia for where's the roller coaster rider road racing. There's the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta in round 7. In round number 8, up an ultimate round, it'll be a trip to Belgium for the legendary circuit of Spa-Francorchamps, and then we bring it all to a close on the 1st of June, and the candle come down at the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle in the US state of Michigan on round 9 of 9. But coming on to today then, well, it is the Autodrome International Enzo Edino Ferrari, and well, the Grand Prix circuit will play host to our drivers located within the confines of the city of Imola within the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Well, this circuit takes its name in honour, originally it was known as the Autodrome International Dino Ferrari, in tribute from Enzo Ferrari to his son Dino, who unfortunately passed away well before the passing of his father. And when Enzo Ferrari himself passed away, the man and the legend behind Ferrari deceased and passed away from this earth, well, the circuit name was updated in commemoration of both his son and also the grand man himself, and that's how it takes its full name today. But it's more commonly referred to as the Imola Circuit in reference to a local city, but regardless of how you refer to it, well, one thing's for certain, you can agree in the fact that iRacing.com have provided us with a brilliant simulator and a brilliant track map to cover the whole circuit, and what a circuit it is, with what is its best part of 17 corners there, and well, its spiring length there of many a mile, and you can see that sharp contrast there of the chicanes, the Tamburello, Villeneuve, and also Variante Alta, contradicting what are those sharp straights, particularly the run out of turn number 15 at Ravazza 2, all the way down towards the Tamburello chicane at turns 2 and 3. You also got the shorter straights there connecting Tamburello and Villeneuve, also the run from Torsa up towards Piratello, that sweeping downhill left-hander, which is off camber, and who could forget Acqua Minerale as well, the double right into left complex, where it's all about balancing the rear of the car as you go through those sharp and sudden direction changes. And this is going to be a circuit where drivers will need to keep their wits about them, whether it be in qualifying or the race, and also make sure the car doesn't come loose over those curbs. As we get ready to go racing today, well, let's give you a quick reminder of the rules. And car setup wise, this is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted based on car class as follows. Our GTPs, or what is our Grand Touring prototypes, they'll take 80% fuel loads. Our LMP2s, they'll take 100% fuel loads because they are the firstiest of our cars out on circuit. And as for our GT3s, they'll take 60% of the fuel load. Qualifying wise, a closed qualifying format shall be used with drivers having 4 flying laps available to them, plus also of course the outlap. And race wise, well, we'll see the race commence via a double file rolling start with each car class separated by a 5 to 10 second gap as managed by the class pole sitter. So that means we will have the GTPs ahead of the LMP2s and subsequently the LMP2s ahead of the GT3s. And we should point out that whilst we do have a GT3 Pro and a GT3 AM class, all the GT3s will be intermingled together. There is no separation between them, and therefore if you're a GT3 AM driver, your goal is to qualify as high as possible within the entirety of the GT3 field, because if you can get on GT3 AM pole and put many a Pro driver between yourself and the next AM driver, well, you're setting yourself up for potential success nice and early on. The race shall start for all classes when the GTP class is showing the green flag. There's one mandatory pit stop, and that'll be for fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional, be down to the drivers. And each driver has one fast repair available should they need it. And we could also see a driver make the way to the pit if not for repair work or strategy. It could be because they picked up a drive-through penalty, and that'll be for 20 or more instant points accrued. All race journey, meanwhile, shall be conducted post-race. And as per usual, given our title sponsorship with the Virtual Racing School or VRS for this season, we will be continuing our subscription giveaways today. Thank you to our title sponsor VRS for this. In fact, that as of this round, our giveaways will be as follows. And these will only be available, particularly what will be for our viewers on the YouTube channel, of course. The 3-month subscription that we're going to be giving away today will be a raffle draw from the drivers who finish this round in the GT3 AM class. So all the drivers in the GT3 AM class, they will be entered into the raffle draw for the 3-month subscription. Meanwhile, for the 2-month subscription that's up for grabs, that'll be a raffle draw for all drivers who finish this round in the GTP, LMP2 and GT3 Pro classes combined together. So that's going to be a big pool of drivers, hopefully. And meanwhile, in the 1-month subscription category, well, we continue the theme of that will be for anybody tuning in via the YouTube channel. So on the UK Sim Racing YouTube channel, we should point out, and it all comes down to those of you who've typed the letters VRS in the YouTube chat. Now, don't immediately do it. We haven't quite opened up that giveaway just yet, but we are about to do so. So give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and we will kick off that giveaway in what will be 3, 2, 1. And I believe that giveaway is now underway in the YouTube chat. And therefore, if you do type in VRS in capital letters, you will be entered automatically into the 1-month subscription giveaway draw. As we do say hello there to S. Livingston 23, and I hope you're doing well, and also say hello to Alex Brown there. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, well, as the VRS giveaway gets underway in the YouTube chat, let's head back to circuit side, then hear the roar of a machine coming on through as we walk you through our schedule for today. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinate Time +1 at UTC +1. And as we can see, in what will be just under 5 minutes time, we'll be making our way into that qualifying session. And what will be 10 minutes of qualifying there, all the drivers on a lone instance of the circuit looking to give it their all, after which we'll then be heading to the grid for our 60-minute feature race, due to get underway at approximately 10 past what will be 8 this evening. And what a race it's going to be. If the first 3 rounds of this championship are anything to go by, these races have proven incredibly unpredictable, and it's only going to make things even more exciting for you guys and girls tuning at home and us here in the console booth. But as we say hello there to Anstis Racer as well, and I hope you guys are all doing well, and I do appreciate a number of you are racing in this round and perhaps taking a bit of a breather right now. Well, as we come down to circuit side with less than 5 minutes left on the clock, we do have some surprises already here today. A number of drivers who are not going to be seen on the grid, and that's going to have some permutations, particularly in the GTP class. Now, firstly, you may be noticing that our championship leader in the GTP class is not here at Imola, as far as I'm aware. Well, in fact, he is. I thought he wasn't going to be on the grid, and he is there, so he has decided at last moment to make his way onto the grid, and that's none other than Patrik Thomsen, who's made his way on through there. And, well, I think he spent a lot of laps turning a lot of laps around the Le Mans circuit quite recently as part of another championship, so therefore he's coming into this one completely blind, and therefore that run of victories, well, he's got 2 wins in a row so far based on his wins at Fuji and Long Beach, with his victory at Long Beach being absolutely flawless and taking all the bonus points. Is he going to be able to make it 3 in a row today? That'll be the big question that he's going to be confronted with. I can't see Thomas Cope here, and he was one of the main rivals, so therefore we are still missing the Olympus esports driver at this time, unless my eyes do deceive me. But as we do see there, Patrik Thomsen making his way on through and in towards what will be the braking zone there for the auto chicane, and out of it. Well, we also do have the absence then of what is in the GTP class, Amit Rajit Ghosh, and well, the reason for the absence of Amit Rajit Ghosh is that he's currently not around or not available at his sim rig. He's off to India for the Asia Pacific Championship, and well, if you're wondering a little bit about, is that in real life in terms of racing? Yes, it is with regards to Amit Rajit Ghosh, and I do believe he's quite an accomplished rally driver in real life, and he's going to be participating around in what is a rally championship out there and giving it everything, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. But we have that. Otherwise, in our other classes, we are going to be missing in the LMP2 class, as I'm to understand it. Well, I thought we were going to be missing him, but he's actually made his way here after a number of struggles in the build-up to this week, and there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether he would be making it to the circuit. It's Tom Farr. He makes his way on around him. We thought he may not be here on the grid today, but it looks like he has made the adventure to Imola, and all the better for it, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. But from what the rumour is down the paddock, he's been massively struggling with the circuit in the build-up to this round, and therefore it might be going against him. He's just going to see what points he can get out of this round rather than perhaps going all in, and some drivers, to be fair, are just able to do the best out of it as much as possible. But as he rolls his way to a halt there and parks the car up, we decide enough's enough in terms of practice. And meanwhile, in our GT3 classes, well, I can tell you right now, we haven't got any big names or established names that are missing as far as I'm aware, or I haven't heard anything or been able to discern anything from down in the paddock. But we do have 35 drivers here today, and across our classes that is a grand total of what is 16 GT3 drivers, 9 LMP2 drivers, and 10 what is their GTP drivers. I think it might be 15 GT3 drivers when I do the mathematics correct. Goodness me, my mathematics is very poor. You'll have to forgive me there. You can tell I've been having too much of a good time on my Easter holiday. The fact that I've let my brain relax for 5 seconds. But as our drivers roar the way on around here, well, not too far away as we say hello there in terms of the car to Satinder Dienster in the Tiki Simsport Porsche 992. And of course, the Porsche 992 getting its Evo upgrade this year. And you're going to be seeing that racing later this year at the ADAC 24 Hours of Nürburgring. And it's going to be a very exciting time, because when an Evo machine comes along, it normally does end up on the simulator platform of iRacing as well, and we look forward to seeing it make its way here. But as our drivers come towards the end of this practice session, and I do believe we might be saying hello to what is there, a couple more of you in the respective chats, and I do believe that's Simon Andre Livingston in the YouTube chat who was the first one to respond. And well, good to see you, Simon Andre. And if you're wondering, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, who he is, well, he is one of our previous GT3 AM champions, and a very established and very friendly driver out as well. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him a number of times, and well, you couldn't ask for a better GT3 AM champion in the past in the UK Sim Racing GT3 League. But coming from the past back to the present then, well, who's looking the fastest out there? Well, Patrik Thomsen's looking the fastest of everybody out there so far, overall and in GTP, by the best part of what is 4 attempts over Austin William Campbell. Well, there's Patrik Thomsen crusading his way in towards the auto chicane once again and bouncing his way over the curbs there. He's got to be careful. That indeed all the drivers have to. The track limits at Imola very aggressive compared to other circuits on our calendar, and here is his main rival on circuit at the moment, Austin William Campbell, who is only at what is half a tenth faster than John Williams, and will be the battle of the Ferrari versus the BMW V8 M Hybrid once again, with John Williams in the Cadillac only at half a tenth behind, and that Cadillac V Series GTP, what a wonderful machine that is with its V8 as well, and indeed an absolute distinctive roar as those front brake discs are gliding red hot there as he makes his way on down. In the LMP2 class, well, it is Helder Gonçalves who is the fastest driver currently, even though he is in a freeway title battle with James Ibram and also Øystein Herfjord. And well, James Ibram is the championship leader. Helder Gonçalves is 5 points behind in third, and Øystein Herfjord is 1 point ahead of him, but 4 behind the leader. Do the quick mathematics in your head, then you work out the gaps between them. But with that, and without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the GT3 class, well, we'll have to hold the fort there because it's time for practice to close, and instead we're going into what is qualifying. And who is going to be on pole in our classes by the end of it? It's time to find out. So as qualifying proceeds to get underway, what's the big question that's going to be on the mind of many today? And well, the short answer to that is going to be who is going to be putting it on pole, because pole position around here could be quite crucial over the distance, given the fact, as we mentioned earlier on, overtaking at this circuit can prove a little bit troublesome. Now you may be wondering, why would we say that, given you've got such an extensive run out of Ravazza at turn number 15, all the way down towards Tamburello chicane at turns 2 and 3. Well, that's one of the main overtaking spots, and that is a drag race with the aid of slipstream. You've also got some shorter runs, such as the run coming out of Villeneuve in towards Tulsa, and Tulsa is commonly referred to as what is one of the late braking zones here as you go into the low-speed corner, one of the slowest corners on the circuit. However, the natural form of Imola is, because of the way it has gradually evolved over the years to become much more of a start-stop style of circuit, whereby you sprint out of a corner to then have to stop by coming onto the brakes to the next corner sequence. It means that unless you can get a good run on your rival, you're typically at the helm of needing to either outbrake them, or alternatively, if necessary, absolutely charge your way in and brake as hard as possible to the point of not being able to make any further progress. And therefore, what it does mean is that sometimes moves are going to come down to the finest margins, and if you can't quite get it right, you may be in a little bit of trouble. But will any of our drivers find themselves in trouble with regards to battling on the braking? Well, that's going to be the thought on the mind there, as our time tower on the left-hand side does update itself and show itself in terms of the individual classes. Now, in terms of the story in the GT3s, this is the man who set timing screens alight at Long Beach on his debut or return to the race in the UK Sim Racing Multiclass League, Erik Røseth. Now, a very well-established GT3 Pro and Elite champion over the course of what have been previous seasons of the Multiclass League and also the dedicated GT3 League. And well, he absolutely delivered and dominated in GT3 Pro at Long Beach in the Audi R8 Evo 2 LMS, in the fact that nobody could come close to him, and in the end he took victory by a similar margin to what Kasper Brøckner was able to do so in round number 2 at Fuji over his rivals in the Ford Mustang. So Røseth right now, knowing that he can't afford to drop any points because he has missed 2 rounds of the championship, you get 2 drop rounds in the season. He knows that he's got to go for victories each and every round, or at least the best possible result he can, in order to get himself right in that hunt in the title fight. Albeit, I would say that he's definitely going to be able to do it. As you can see, everybody for a brief moment on dry tyres. We're not expecting any rain here today, and therefore we'll hide the tyre compound, because you would expect everybody to be on dries. Anybody who goes to wet tyres there, well, they'll be springing a surprise and not a welcome one, I can say that. But as he makes way between the apex, he was really the man who absolutely delivered out there. Whereas Kasper Brøckner is your championship leader and bringing home a great result last time out. He has been able to inch his way ahead of Cy Anthony in the GT3 Pro class, only by a minor margin, by enough that he's been able to take the grasp of the lead after the two of them went into Long Beach, tied on points. But it is Kasper Brøckner who leads by that slender margin at the moment of only what is there, as I double check my notes, well, a 2-point lead over Cy Anthony, and therefore they'll both be fighting each other, but very wary that Røseth is really right now the danger man if he's able to get those results together. In the GT3 AM class, meanwhile, well, we did see what was a little bit of a deflating of the title charge of Rob Windsor, who is your championship leader, and his advantage has actually been cut to only 5 points over his rivals, given he had a very difficult day at Long Beach. And the man who really flew high at Long Beach by comparison to him was none other than James Connolly, who absolutely delivered out there. Now, can I see James Connolly out on circuit? I can't at the moment. He's in the pit lane, in fact, and I wonder if he's going to be able to get that McLaren out on circuit, because if he can do so, that would be great. If not, he's going to start from the back of the GT3 AM class. But then again, races have been won from the back of the field in the past in the Multiclass League here at UK Sim Racing, so therefore never say never is what I'm trying to say. But as he comes down in towards Ravazza 1 and 2, well, Windsor today is going to try and prove that it was just a blip at Long Beach, and it was not a run of form that's starting to decline, and that decline is going to become ever more evident, because if so, it will leave him very vulnerable. And with the absence of Matt Edmondson last time out at Long Beach, well, that's the difference between the two, because it really has been the fight between Edmondson and Windsor, the two sister UK Sim Racing team rivals. And well, as he makes one down here, Edmondson will be back in the reins today, looking to give it everything he can, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do as he makes his way on through. As he does so there, and all the drivers making their way around right now, well, as they charge their way into and out of the corners, we do look to what is your fastest man out there of John Williams at this time. And well, Williams right now on a 31.833, the fastest of everybody in that GTP class by a sizable margin. But then again, he might be going for what is the strategy of essentially just pumping out the laps, where some of his rivals may be going for what will be banker laps, and then subsequently using a lap or two to burn the fuel out of the car and then go for one attack lap. You can gamble on that strategy when when you do have 4 flying laps available, you can essentially have your out lap plus a follow-up lap or a warm-up lap, which will consume well those out laps. And then on lap number 2, you can go absolutely hammer and tongs, then use lap number 3 to cool down, and then do it again on the final lap. And we have commonly heard from what has been our drivers in the interviews from the GTP and the LMP2 classes that given the update to the tyre model prior to the commencement of this league, we have seen that tyre model change significantly to the point whereby it's a very difficult compound to get warm, albeit John Williams showing no struggles there in getting that tyre compound warm for effect simulations as he moves now to pole position once again on 30.488 and looking very quick out there as he does so. But looking from one drive in the GTPs to one drive at the LMP2s, let's jump on board here with none other than Gonçalves as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Imola Circuit. So making his way down towards Tamburello chicane at what will be a braking point there of about 150 metres from corner apex all the way down from 169 miles an hour, connecting the curbs together and now into turn number 4, up into 3rd gear as he does so, then into 4th and flat out now all the way in the Dallara P217 machine as he looks to his right for his brake marker there, the 50 metre board to trail brake into Villeneuve, left into right here down to 2nd gear at the 2nd apex, rolls the car out and now brings it over sharply to the right to brake into Tulsa at turn number 7. Down to 1st gear and as he makes his way out here, absolutely slams the throttle down, uses the exit curb as much as he dreams to dare to do so, and now up the rise in towards Pirotella corner. Here it's unsighted initially as you make way over the crest, keep over to the right, onto the brakes here, about 50 metres from corner apex, wait for it on the throttle and then feed the throttle in, avoid the off-camber calls in understeer, and now down to Aqua Minerale. And here it's all about getting the weight over the nose and then settling the car down to turn right through turn number 10. Does so absolutely brilliantly there, keeps the 2 right-hand wheels just within the white lines, which are the legal requirement, and now heading towards the Alta chicane at turns 11 and 12, looks to his left-hand side, braking at the 75 metre mark, coming all the way down to 1st gear, hopping his way over the curves like the Easter Bunny, and as he makes his way on out now, well, there's going to be no eggs at the end of this lap, just a good lap by looks of things. He comes all the way down through turn number 13 and onto a Ravazza 1 and 2 here, turns 14 and 15, breaking the 100 metre board there. It's downhill, you have to brake early, but the car doesn't creep away from it and goes as late as possible here into the 2nd apex, and now it's flat out all the way for the Kingster 16 and 17 to complete lap for Gonçalves. What's it going to be? He's currently 4th from the LMP2 class. He makes his way out towards the timing line, and this time around it is going to be for the fast charging driver. He moves up to P2 in LMP2 and he is only, my goodness, 13 thousandths off of James Ibram's lap. And so close there, I think he's going to be a little bit gutted. That hasn't quite worked out the way he's wanted it to, but he's very close, and I think he's going to be happy with the fact that he's practically there. He's just got to get a little bit more, and when he does so, well, it is going to work out for him, as we do show you there, and we do apologise for a slight technical issue. We do show you what is the class positions there and the gaps to the class leaders in terms of those times. But as our drivers make the way on around, roaring the way on through at the moment, there's still time out there, and there's still some laps available. Gonçalves being on his final flying lap in the GT3 PRO class. It's Kasper Brøckner right now by 6 thousandths, who is ahead of Erik Røseth. Well, that is a bucking of the trend, because we thought that Røseth, given his pace that he brought to Long Beach, we would expect that he was going to be absolutely leading the way again in qualifying here, but Kasper Brøckner's found some time out there in the Ford Mustang, and well, as a result, it's really putting a remark back, which is, okay, you had the show at Long Beach, we get it, but here today, I'm going to make sure you're not the only star in the GT3 PRO class. And also, look at that from Sean Cranley Swash, currently 3rd place in the GT3 PRO class, and that is a very good qualifying time. The highest we've seen him qualifying previously has been what was 6th place, I do believe, and that was at Fuji, unless I'm mistaken. So Sean Cranley Swash also having a good qualifying session here. But meanwhile, speaking about good qualifying sessions, Emil Koemans is flying out there on his final flying lap, and in the LMP2 class, he missed out on pole, but he moves up to 2nd place, just ahead of Gonçalves there by 1.5 tenths, and missed out on pole versus James Ibram by the best part of what is a further 10th as well, as Ibram's on his final lap here. Can he improve even further and potentially put this pole position out to the distance? Gonçalves was not able to improve from his previous lap, so he stays 3rd. Tom Farr, meanwhile, moves up to 6th on a 35.437, and I think Ibram's been given the call. Come into the pits, there's no point. Nobody's going to beat you now because everyone else has done their laps, and well, he's going to be absolutely pleased with that. But as we do see, what is here? Foster making his way on across that timing line. Well, he's all the way down in 8th from the GTPs, and that's not going to be a happy qualifying session. What about Erik Røseth? He comes to the line then. Well, he's been the fastest in the first half a lap of the GT3s, but the second half it's been a bit of a struggle, but he still takes pole position there on what is a 41.881, and that's by 1.5 tenths over Kasper Brøckner. Can Brøckner respond is the question. Well, we'll have to wait and see, as he's still on a lap. He's on his final flying lap as he makes his way around, as we say hello to Simon Hartley in at the YouTube chat there, and Kasper Brøckner makes his way up the hill, but he knows he's got a way to go, and he's not improved in the first half of the lap already as he makes his way in towards Piratella Corda. Elsewhere, Ryan Walker's out there. He's currently 5th in the LMP2 class. He's trying to improve, albeit he's got a sizable, what is 9/10 gap to Øystein Herfjord, the top 4 of the LMP2 class, and a bit of a class of their own. It's almost as if we've got 2 classes in the LMP2 staying qualifying, and Ryan Walker's at the head of the second half of the pack. Meanwhile, on GT3 AM class, well, the AM qualifying session for the GT3s has come to a close, and it is James Foster who has taken that pole position by 3/10 over Daniel Pace. That's absolutely phenomenal, but qualifying's complete, ladies and gentlemen, and well, with the clock striking 10 minutes, let's take you through that grid as they get ready to line up for what is a 4th round of the championship. So as all of our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up here at the Imola Circuit. Taking pole position overall in the GTP class, it is Patrik Thomsen for Williams Sim Racing Academy. He is joined on the front row of the grid there, a further what was half a second back in here. My goodness, Patrik Thomsen does not know anything other than 100% attack mode every day. Well, John Williams takes second place there for Effect Simulations. Austin William Campbell lines up in 3rd for Effect Simulations Club Sport, head of Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport, and on row number 3, it will be the pairing of Darren Norquette for Racing Forces and Joshua G. Wilson for Effect Simulations. We'll then have starting at 7th today, Ryan Davies for Empire Motorsport ahead of Nathan Foster, his teammate, and completing the top 10 there in a difficult qualifying session for Aztec Racing's Matthew Sheraton, and it will also be there Andreas Nordenhoff for Olympus Esports. And well, that's how your top 10 will start. Just behind them on what will be row number 6, we go from the GTPs then to the LMP2s, and it will be at best the rest, but starting on LMP2 pole, James Ibram for Effect Simulations Club Sport, and he'll be in the company of his teammate there, Emil Koopmans. Behind them, starting on what will be 3rd of the class, but 13th overall, Helder Gonçalves for Tractix Racing, ahead of Effect Simulations Carbon's Øystein Herfjord, who today will know that he's got to try and redeem himself from what happened last time out. Ben Cullen starts 15th for Effect Simulations, ahead of Ryan Walker for Altitude 3M Esport, in another good qualifying session for the turn. Ben Cullen leaving it to his last lap to dethrone Walker from the second half of the LMP2 pack. On what is row at number 9 will be Tom Farr for DDK Racing Team and the privateer James Acklam, and then we'll have Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations Carbon, completing the LMP2 field starting 19th. We'll then have starting what will be a 20th overall, but on pole for GT3 overall and GT3 Pro, it'll be Erik Røseth for WSR Esports, with that late qualifying lap absolutely shattering expectations. He'll be followed up then by what will be the pairing on row number 11 at Kasper Brøckner for Old Dudes and Cards, and the fellow Ford Mustang driver from the team of Ansi Sports of Sean Cranley Swash. We'll have Tom Weston for DDK Racing Team starting 23rd, ahead of Darren Sharples for Old Dudes and Cars, and then it will be Jack Barker who begins his day for Made for Racing 25th on the grid, just ahead of your GT3 and pole sitter for DCW Racing, and well done to him at James Foster in that McLaren, absolutely flying high. Daniel Pace starts the day 27th for Old Dudes and Cars, ahead of Nathan Anstis for UK Sim Racing Irvine, and your top 30 is completed by UK Sim Racing Buttons Matt Edmondson and Steve Hughes for Ansi Sports. We then have on what is your 16th row of the grid, Satinder Dienser for Tiki Simsport, ahead of Rob Windsor, another difficult qualifying session for the UK Sim Racing Irvine driver. He'll be ahead of Alex Brown for Slow and Steady Racing, or SAS Racing in short, ahead of Simon Hartley for Team DWR and Sim Coach Setups, and then we'll have James Connolly starting 35th for UK Sim Racing Button, and that's how all of our 35 drivers will line up, ladies and gentlemen, as they make the way on through, and we are just about to make our way into the race very shortly. And when we do, well, you can imagine it's going to be close, it's going to be tense, and it's going to be what Imola does best, and that is fast and furious race, and for lights out to checker flag all the way through and through, and track position will be key, but you can be certain that Patrik Thomsen will have John Williams and Austin William Campbell very feverishly looking to make moves before they get to Tamburello for the first time. But will it be that easy? Because that four-wheel drive and that Ferrari is definitely very ferocious. Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to find out with round 4 of the championship in the UK Sim Racing Multiclass League Season 3, as sponsored by Virtual Racing School and brought to you on iRacing. And it's go, go, go from Patrik Thomsen immediately. He does not waste a breath. He does not waste time and goes as soon as the safety cars across the line. We're green flag racing then for 60 minutes of racing action here. And as our drivers make their way down towards turn number 2, well, there's already fighting behind Joshua Wilson getting tucked into by Joe Newman, who makes a place nice and early on. But as they make the way on through the cores, I think Darren Norquette being caught sleeping as well as our drivers make the way through the opening chicane. Matthew Sheraton trying to get over the back of Ryan Davies, can't quite do so as they make the way in towards the next chicane. Meanwhile, James Ibram in the LMP2 LMP2 class leads that field through. No changes so far, albeit side by side there between James Ibram and Tom Farr, with Simon Bamber having a slow start to his race. And in the GT3 field, well, it is Erik Røseth who's got away safely and securely in the lead of the class, in the car class and GT3 Pro. Meanwhile, that is a change of position. Nathan Anstis up a place, indeed the number drives up the place, because I believe Darren Sharp was starting from the pit lane, albeit that's not going to change or cause any big surprise in terms of where drivers qualified in class, albeit for Sharples that's going to be a long way up from the back of the field, but he'll go for it. Simon Hartley here, well, he's under a bit of pressure already to try and make his way past James Conley. In fact, I think Hartley losing a place to Conley. I think Hartley's got a problem with that car. He'll try and get it back up to speed as quickly as he can, but meanwhile, coming to the end of the first lap almost, we're coming to the auto chicane, and this is Joe Newman all over the back of Joshua Wilson as they make the way on through. I believe there's been an instant further back for Rob Windsor in the GT3 AM class. We'll try to come to that when we can. There's action happening left, right and centre at the moment, and we will get some updates there when we can. I think Simon Bamber was involved in a little bit of an incident before we went green flag racing, or just as we did so. And well, as we do see Joe Newman making his way on around, well, he's not going to be able to catch up to the back of Wes Wilson there, as Wilson gets the better run out the final major quarter. And if anything, now Darren Norquet, I think, is taking a look at the back of what is that Cadillac and salivating at the prospect to try to pass it. Become the end of one lap, and they'll be turning many of them. You can see that Darren Norquet inching closer and closer in the Racing Forces machine, and Nathan Foster right back there as well, trying to help out his teammate a little bit, but too far to do so in the Porsche 963 at the moment, so they stay as they were. LMP2 wise, however, well, here's Øystein Herfjord, your championship contender, looking for a potential move on his fellow driver Helder Gonçalves, and he's got to look around the outside there, but Gonçalves covers him off on the inside and says you're going to have to be a bit more inventive than that. I can see that coming from a mile away. That might all be about a bit of mental conditioning and making Gonçalves think that the move's going to come there and not coming into Villeneuve. He gets very close there. He's going to look to the inside. Is Herford. It doesn't go for it once again, decides to back out, but definitely thinking about it in the GT3 AM class. Here's a move, and that Steve Hughes comes roaring down the inside of Matt Edmondson and nails it under braking. I think Edmondson there might have decided to brake a little bit earlier than originally planned, but Steve Hughes coming on through like what is a bull, albeit there's a horse on the side of the car on that Ford Mustang, but coming through like a charging bull, and nobody's going to stop him there. He's up into third in the GT3 AM class. A brilliant move there under braking in the number 7, and now trying to make a bit more progress. He chased after Daniel Payne and James Foster. Speaking of James Foster, is a DCW Racing McLaren driver as he makes his way out of what is Tosa Corda. I can tell you one thing, he didn't have too much time to practice. I think all his practices have come in earlier today. He hasn't had as much time as he would have liked to earlier this week from what I've been able to gather down the DCW Racing Garage. And right now, the number 84 driver absolutely doing very well in limited practice to be able to lead the GT3 class, but it's a long way to go. And putting it on pole is one thing, surviving 60 minutes here at Imola is another, because when those rear tyres get worn down and start to get hot, the rear end of that McLaren, much like many of our GT3 machines, particularly those that are mid-engine rear-wheel drive or rear-engine rear-wheel drive, those are the ones that are going to become very skittish through what will be the Aquamanarale complex, and that could be race defining should that rear let go. But right now, let's not let go of the battle in action here between Tom Farr and James Ibram, as Ibram in the number 77 in the camouflage machine looks to try and go around the outside to inside. They're going through turn at number 17 and in towards what will be the Kinker 1, and in turns 2 and 3 at Tamburello. It's going to be on the inside here for Ibram. They'll go too wide into the chicane, but Ibram does get ahead, and as he does so, we look back from the rear. Always the now 7th place 77 machine in the LMP2 class. A lovely move there from James Ibram, and we're making that progress very quickly indeed, up another place, and now trying to make his way after Ryan Walker is the second up the road, and Ibram there doing it absolutely like clockwork, as anybody would try to do in Tamburello, but giving you an exact textbook demonstration of how to make the move into the opening chicane. Further back in the GT3 AM class, well, this is James Connolly fighting with Alex Brown, getting up the inside of the slow and steady Racing McLaren. The battle of McLaren's but goes a bit deep, but in the end, Brown tucks in a little bit tighter there. I think decides not to fight it all the way around the outside to the inside of the exit at Tamburello, but look at Simon Hartley meanwhile. He says, well, if you're not going to do anything, I'm going to have a go here, and then backs out of it, realising that 2 does not go into 1, or 3 does not go into 1 at the Villeneuve chicane, albeit you can try it, and James Connolly will pull away in there. Simon Hartley trims the weeds there on the outside, or goes into the gravel trap more so, and avoids going onto the grass, but Hartley eager to try and make some progress, but I think getting a little bit too close and a little bit too caught up in that dirty air, and that's costing time. You can see that right now Brown not quite on the pace by comparison, and Hartley is absolutely flying behind him as they come in towards Piratella for what for them is the third time of asking, but through the corners and up they go in towards what will be Aquamanarale, or down to I should say. Well, from them we look to your overall race leader and indeed the GTP class leader of Patrik Thomsen, who put it on pole by an absolutely staggering margin, as he seems to have a habit of doing so. But right now, Austin William Campbell right there behind him as we ride on board with the second place driver. And as he makes his way up the rise here, these two are locked in, locking horns in a battle by themselves. The gap to what is John Williams is 1.5 seconds, and therefore you can tell that right now the Effect Simulations Club Sport driver in the 905 of William Campbell, well, his focus is one thing and one thing only, which is do not let Thomsen break away, which is that habit of doing so. If Thomsen gets on pole, he just seems to be able to find a way to open that gap up, and we have seen in the wet weather at both Algarve and Fuji, you could attribute it quite significantly to the all-wheel drive system that Ferrari has compared to the rest of the GTPs, which are primarily rear-wheel drive systems in terms of where the power is deployed to the wheels. However, the point being here, in dry conditions, we should see that whilst that all-wheel drive system may give the Ferrari a bit better traction coming out of the corners, however, as they make the way on through, you won't have the wet conditions through all the corners, and that's where we could see was the rear-wheel drive Cadillacs and also the BMW, such as being piloted by William Campbell here, they could start to come into a world of their own. But Thomsen getting that good exit out of Ravazza too, and that gap open up for a brief moment as Thomsen sets the fastest lap of the race of 30.402. William Campbell not quite matching him, and meanwhile John Williams setting a personal best on ways of 30.671, and well, these drivers right now continue to push each other as far as they can, but still plenty of distance out there, and I can imagine it's just as much a game right now of not pushing the tyre too hard as it is a game of trying to keep each other honest. But whilst we do have a brief moment, we are going to come back to Rob Windsor, who was involved in an incident earlier on, but he's going to be involved in a battle into Piratelli. He's going to try and go around the outside there, down Sharples, who's starting from the pit lane, keep in mind. So these two right now at the very back of the field of our 35 drivers. No change between them there as they now come into what will be Aqua Nerali, but Rob Windsor has gone backwards, and even more so. And how did he end up going backwards in the early stages, I hear many of you ask? Well, we're going to explain very shortly, because we do have a replay lined up as they make the way in towards the Alta chicane. No change there, and here's the replay to explain what happened to Rob Windsor at the start of the race. Now, this was on the open lap as he made his way out of what was the Villeneuve chicane and in towards Tulsa. Does he come in a bit too hot? The answer is yes, he does. Just trying to carry too much speed on the downshift there causes the rear tyres to completely overspin as he turned through the apex. Very easy mistake to do, even for the finest drivers out there. And Rob Windsor ending up at the very back of the field, all the way down to the back. And now he's got a lot of work to do. But as we come back to live pictures, that's Alex Brown, who's in the barriers. Oh, goodness me! And as our GTP's coming through, well, Brown in the end realised himself a bit too late coming out of what is Tosa Corda, and well, a couple of drives there to take slight evasive action. In fact, that's Ravazza too, that's not Tosa. Let me get myself corrected there, and well, Brown in the end gets it turned around in time, but I think a couple of drivers are definitely a bit cognizant of the fact the multi-class aspect now starts to kick off here at Imola. We're only 8 minutes in, and we are starting to see the GTPs catch up to the GT3 field, and this could really make or break some races early on in terms of gaps that have been opened up versus gaps that could suddenly close down. Albeit Ryan Davies right now be hoping that he can get some traffic between himself and Andreas Nordenhoff behind, as it looks like the BMW driver here being reeled in hand over fist by the Porsche 963. And well, based on the words of Thomas Cope that we did here in what was our season opener at Algarve, and also out of Fuji, in the fact this Porsche very strong, or at least the Olympus Esport Porsche 963 is very strong in changeable conditions, but in static conditions seems to struggle by comparison with its peers. Albeit we've got static conditions here, but Nordenhoff right now trying to give everything at this in order to make up some place and gain some points for himself and the team as he makes his way up the rise. And we say hello to Martin Tilley in the YouTube chat, who wished he got a late entry into the lead because he does miss race it here, and we're very happy to have you tuned in, Martin, as we do see there a mistake from Nordenhoff carrying too much speed beyond the apex of what was Piratella corner. Gets it recovered in the end, but that's going to cost him a lot of time in chasing down Ryan Davies to the tune of what is the best part of 2.5 seconds of time he's lost there. But meanwhile, from a driver who's lost time to a driver trying to make up time, well, we can see Joe Newman all over the back of Joshua Wilson as they come down through 13, and well, Wilson covering him off there, but the traffic now getting him in earnest here as they make the way out of the first part of Ravazza onto the second part. We ride on board with Newman in the 97 as he makes one out there in the Cadillac, chasing after the Ferrari of Wilson, and here they go as they make the way around the outside of the GT3 field. That's Simon Hartley they just made the way past, the 7th place GT3 AM driver, and as they roar the way down the start finish straight, we've got GT3 in front. Where's it going to position itself? Puts itself on the outside, so Newman can't look for a move here, but he's going to try and crowd that GT3 as much as he can to give himself the breathing room into Tamburello corner, and well, in the end it is going to provide a buffer there for Wilson. Wilson knowing how to use the traffic to make things horrendous for Newman to try and make his way through, and as they come in towards Villeneuve, there's going to be no change here as they make that chicane car around. There is that, hold up a second, that's Daniel Pace, who's ended up pointing in the wrong direction, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. Yes, that's Daniel Pace, as there's been gravel kicked all over the circuit as a result. I believe Pace has been involved in some sort of spin there. Was he aided or his own volition? I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure we'll get a replay to explain it, but Daniel Pace having a bit of a nightmare moment there, and that's put him all the way down to 8th in the GT3 class, and the only driver behind him is Alex Brown at this time, who had his own spin, of course, coming out of Ravazza 2 moments ago. But from that and the drama and what's spinning around to right now places that are going around in terms of being exchanged, well, Helder Gonçalves still keeping Øystein Herfjord behind him, albeit seemingly struggling a little bit against the tide as Herfjord goes up the inside into Tosa corner. They rub slightly and Herfjord's going to have a tighter exit line, so that means Gonçalves will be able to come back at him here with a better traction as they make the way up the hill. Side by side they go here, and if you're on the outside of a car on the inside, you've got to be brave here to try and hold it through Piratella's contact between the two of them, and Gonçalves is turned sideways there, and well, I think in the end he expected what was Herfjord to back off there, knowing that he did have himself a nose ahead, but Herfjord would argue, well, I'm halfway alongside, so I've got the right to that space. So I think those two drivers might have a word with each other after the race. Well, with Gonçalves right now, all he can do is get his head back down and go fighting once again. But definitely a bit of a tricky one there between the two drivers, and well, as a result, Gonçalves now finds himself all the way down in 8th place in LMP2 class, but he's not going to give up, but he will have a set of tyres that have definitely got very hot in a very short period of time, and that's not going to help them in terms of their longevity. And if he has got any significant damage on the car, could that mean he's got to come in and make it a 2-stop race rather than the expected 1-stop? Well, hopefully he doesn't have to do that, because we want to see how quickly he can charge his way back through the field, but of course, if needs must, and well, that'll be a bit of a frustrating end to what could be a race for a podium finish, if not victory, for Helder Gonçalves. But meanwhile, we come back to the GT3 Pro class here, and one driver we haven't really talked about is this man, the Ford Mustang, who's chasing after another Mustang, with Erik Røseth having made his way into the lead as a result of that brilliant qualifying lap in the end, with only 2 seconds up the road from Sean Cranley-Swash. But along the way, well, Cranley-Swash has got to deal with this driver in front, and that is none other than what is Kasper Brøckner, as we ride on board and look down over the top of the ANSI Sports 117. And in the battle of the Mustangs right now, well, these two separated by on average half a second and pushing each other along. Noticing there that Cranley-Swash opting not to follow the toe of Brøckner too closely. I think wary of the traffic that makes its way on past the GTPs. And well, Cranley-Swash right now really enjoying his time here at Imola, it would seem. And well, we do know this Mustang on circuits which do have power elements to them, it's very hard to beat. The only GT3 that will beat it in terms of bounce points is the Mercedes AMG Evo, and this is a very stable car over high curbs as well, so it gives you a lot of confidence in the car. And Imola does naturally have a lot of high curbs in its chicanes, so the Mustang here being a very comfortable car, it's a very comfortable pair of slippers, you could say. And right now, as he makes his way down into turns 2 and 3, well, Kasper Brøckner staying ahead, but Cranley-Swash not letting him go, albeit it's going to have to let him go for a little bit because the GTPs make the way on through, and of course that is the intermingling of the classes here, which can always prove to be just a little bit challenging over the distance. But as our drivers make the way in towards what is the Villeneuve chicane there, well, they make it cleanly on through for now. Meanwhile, we come down to what is the battle in the LMP2s between Tom Farr and Helder Gonçalves, and already Gonçalves all over the back of Farr as they come out of Ravazza 2. You can see Gonçalves absolutely attacking the corners there, running wide a bit and then some as they make the way onwards. His next target after that will be James Ibram, then Ryan Walker. They're all in quick succession, but first he's got to pick off Farr, and the DDK Racing team driver, how hard will he fight this? He pulls aside. Farr in the end opts to stay right on the outside line there. Practically saying to Gonçalves, look, go through. I know you're not in my race. I don't need you near me. And Gonçalves, I think, being caught out a little bit there by going very deep into Tamburello, gets it stopped right in time and doesn't lock up the front brakes. Well, I think Gonçalves is expecting Farr to put up a little bit of a fight, even though Farr practically says to him, look, the door's open, all you got to do is drive through it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, to be fair, and that's not to insult Gonçalves. Sometimes it catches you by surprise and then you've got to react to it quickly. But good reactions there from Gonçalves to make sure it didn't end up in the gravel trap, and he moves up into P7 in at the LMP2 class, and Farr will be hoping that he can be pulled along now all the way up towards what will be the next driver. But from them, well, we come up to what is Ryan Walker, who does have James Ibram trying to chase after him, as Ibram hanging close but not quite close enough right now to really get stuck into the fight. And the Altitude 3M esports driver from what is it, Ryan Walker Sim Racing Photography, indeed official photographer for what is the UK Sim Racing Multiclass League and other UK Sim Racing leagues, and also a photographer, I do believe, for Motorsport UK's esports division. Well, right now he's gone from photos to what is turning laps quickly as possible, and well, as he makes his way on down towards what we were Ravazza 1, he has got the pressure of James Ibram close behind, but Ibram having to gradually whittle this gap down. It's not an easy gap to whittle down. And as we ride on board, looking back from the 297 from Scotland, well, right now for Walker, it's all about just nailing those exits and making sure not to lose any time in the traction zones. If he can do that, it becomes a lot harder for Acklam as they make the way onto another lap. For our LMP2s, this takes them onto lap number 10. There'll be plenty more laps to be achieved, and our GTPs are making their way for the auto chicane currently, so they are gradually getting close to the LMP2 field, but not close enough to lap them yet. Probably in about 3 to 4 laps, we'll start to see Patrik Thomsen make his way through the LMP2 field, and that's where we'll see another multi-class shuffle as our LMP2s are catching up to the GT3s conversely, so it is all going to get very tense and tasty in very short order, and we could see some place swapping as a result in due time. But right now, Ryan Walker keeping that gap to 3 to 2.5 tenths to Acklam, but you can see Acklam really attacking the corners such as Tulsa there. Walker taking a much more gradual U-shape approach to the apex, whereas Acklam practically V-shaping it in terms of how he gets the car pointed in. And that is a more aggressive approach. It does work in terms of shortening the lap time. The one thing it also does, it puts a lot more load on the front right tyre under braking, and therefore Acklam right now can only get away with this for so long before he risks compromising that front right tyre compound. Of course, in the pits, they may opt to change 1 or 2 tyres whilst they also have fuel going in the car, but that's at the driver's discretion. But argue you want to avoid needing to change tyres where possible, because whilst it can gain you a little bit of time, it can also cost you some time in the pit lane, depending on how many tyres you need to change. But as they hop over the curbs there, coming out of Walter, Walker putting the car in the middle of the road and making the way onwards here with some GT3 traffic. That's going to hurt Acklam in terms of being able to make a move. It may be some saving grace here for Walker as they come down through 13 in towards Ravazza 1. And well, Acklam, I think he thought about it there, but decided not to, and well, as they make the way out for the corners, Walker holding on for now, but Acklam getting very, very eager to try and make this move with some more traffic up the road as well, where you've got some GT3 battling just in front. It's Rob Windsor who's trying to pick his way past Simon Hartley as they make the way on down the straight in towards turns 2 and 3, and right now Hartley just ahead of Wes Windsor by 2.5 tenths and will feel safe enough for now, but you never know, that exchange could change at a moment's notice. But speaking of one thing that we haven't checked at a moment's notice, we'll hold the phone there as Walker looks one way, then the other to make his way on past Wes Windsor, and that's going to enable Acklam to get very close. He's going to get very, very critically close there as Walker practically has the door shut in his face firmly by Hartley. Has to give Acklam an opportunity to go around the outside, but Walker's now going to be on the inside there as Hartley tries to give the space, realising what he's done, but doesn't realise that in turn what he's done is actually done the same back to Wes Acklam there, and a bit of misfortune. That's not to point the finger at Wes Simon Hartley, just caught out there by the approaching LMP2 field, but look at that, Helder Gonçalves has been able to catch up to them both as a result of this, and as they make the way on through what is Piratella, well, right now, Helder Gonçalves, who was 2 seconds behind these guys going onto this lap, is Sonny over the back of them. Well, I think he's going to back off there and just wait for his turn, or is he? No, he's not, in fact, as we jump on board here with Helder Gonçalves and look into the racing line immediately. Now, is this to try and put a feint on Acklam and make him think that something's not coming? Well, no, the answer is he was just playing it safe there, and as they make the way with the auto chicane, bouncing over the curbs, Helder Gonçalves going a little bit sideways there over the curb, and therefore losing some momentum, and he's going to have to wait now until the start-finish straight to try and make the move on Walker Acklam together as they come on down. But I think he's also potentially hoping that the two of them in front might take each other off the circuit, or at least compromise each other, so that way he can make it a 2-for-1 special. And once they come out of Ravazza 2, there's a lot of GT3 traffic in front of them, so therefore they're all going to be forced down one line here, albeit Acklam tucks into the GT3s. He wants to tow as much as he possibly can. He's struggling to get the speed on Walker down the straight here in towards Tamburello. Gonçalves, meanwhile, now tucks the inside as they come on through, and well, it's going to be at the long line of traffic as Gonçalves looks around the outside. That is very brave. Oh, goodness me! And he's turned sideways there. Now, as to why, in terms of was there contact with GT3, or did Gonçalves just lock up and go sideways, we'll have to try and see very shortly. But that has completely compromised Gonçalves' race, and it's gone backwards once again. But as he brings it back together, well, we do plan to get a replay of that. But first up, we need a replay of what happened only moments ago to Alex Brown on lap number 4. Firstly, I believe this was coming out of Ravazza 2 as he was battling there with the 777 of the old dudes in cars car. I believe that was Daniel Pays, and just losing it there off of what the apex curb of Ravazza 2, so end up just missing out the tyre barrier. And then we did have the incident for Daniel Pays 2 laps later, and this was in the run down towards the Villeneuve chicane. He was being chased at time by what was one of his fellow drivers. I think that was Nathan Anstis, and in the end going around there, and I wonder if that was a bit of netco contact for the old dude Dutton cars, Ford Mustang trucks. It looked like it was either of his own volition or that was Netco contact. And we just had that moment for Helder Gonçalves only moments ago. And what exactly happened, I hear you ask? Well, this is what happened to Helder Gonçalves as he was battling his way down into turn number 2. And this was very tricky conditions here under braking in the multi-class battling. Tries to go around the outside and in the end just comes in with too much speed and the rear lets go. James Connolly takes to what is the escape gravel there, knowing it's a bit too tense for him to be able to stay on his racing line. So Helder Gonçalves has been a bit too eager to try and make the move, and in the end that eagerness coming back to bite him on the backside. But as he makes his way into the pit lane there, and well, this will be very likely an early pit stop in order to try and give himself time to mentally reset and go attacking again. There might also be some damage on the car that he'll look to repair. We'll come back to your live racing pictures, and well, as I try to make the way in towards Ravazza 1 and 2 in the GTP class, so the 13th time of asking. Well, we do say hello to Rehan in the YouTube chat who asks, can we get a shout out for Alex Brown? Of course we can get a shout out for Alex Brown, one of our novice drivers on the grid, his first iRacing League, and well, I do believe we'll see him very shortly, and here he is. In fact, he continues to make his way around. He's had a bit of a misfortune race so far, including that spin we showed you only moments ago, but still it's good to see the McLaren 720S Evo driver out there keeping his head down and trying to press on and do his best, because you never know what can happen at the end of the day. Indeed, to finish first you got to finish, and that's what he'll be putting in his mind, in the fact that he wants to get to the end of each and every race and get some points on the board, because you never know what those could be worth come the end of the season. As he makes his way on through there for the slow and steady racing outfit. Well, we do come back to the GTP class, and in due time, because the battle for 5th place in the class between Joshua Wilson, Darren Orkett and Nathan Foster is getting closer and closer between our drivers now as they make the way in towards Piratella corner. And Joshua Wilson, well, after breaking away in the early stages from Norkett and Foster, he's now been reeled back in. And Joe Newman has conversely found his way past this baton onwards. Oh my goodness, and Norkett there getting insanely close coming on for Minerali. Completely different pace compared to Wilson. And I think Norkett getting very adventurous down to braking. You can see the front right had to lock up to stop him tap in the rear of the 908 Ferrari. And well, that could have been a very different story there if Norkett's reactions had not been on point, as the traffic really confounds Newman for a brief moment there. And well, as they make the way on through, Newman having to look one way then the other. And as they all make the way down to Ravazza 1, well, Norkett now is going to be told, okay, you've got to wait your turn, as he's got to try and find his way past what will be the old Dutton cars McLaren there as they make the way on out and roaring the way onto the start-finish straight. Now we can see how close Nathan Foster wants to get to the back of those GT3s. He wants to slipstream as much as possible off of each and every car here as they make the way on through, but there's more and more GT3s wherever you look down this start-finish straight, so it's going to get very close here as they make the way on down. Simon Hartley down the inside, he's going to have to hold that inside line because the GTP traffic wants to make its way on through, and in the end Darren Orkett is compromised one way, he's compromised another. Can now Nathan Foster find a way through? No, he can't, as he's giving the elbow there side by side with Simon Hartley into the gravel. And well, Nathan Foster's not going to be too happy about that as they make the way on around and in towards what will be turns 4 and 5 they go. Now, whether there was actual contact or not quite sure. The camera angle would suggest it, but then again, that's why the stewards have the cameras they do, as Darryl Norkett's taking a trip off the road. Meanwhile, I'm not quite sure how on earth that's happened, but we've also had, I believe, that's Rob Windsor who's ended up on the inside of Toaster Corner. Surely they've had a bit of a coming together. If they haven't, then I'm not sure what's happened between Darryl Norkett and Rob Windsor, but something's gone very, very wrong there. And well, we can't quite stop the thought process there, because we come back to Daniel Payes is now over the back of Simon Hartley. Well, between them, they've got what's the number 85 of Ryan Davies trying to put its way up the inside, and for Minerali, one of the places you don't go too wide, but they're showing you can do it. And as they come out of the corner, on the other side goes none other than what is Andreas Nordenhoff. Well, right now, GTP drivers, I think their patience is running thin. It's causing this GT3 Anfield to come back together very quickly, albeit in amongst all that is the GT3 PRO Old Dutton Cars McLaren of Darren Sharples, and Simon Hartley right now is at the head of this quartet, and I think just thinking to himself, can things politely calm down? And the answer may be no, as there's a look up the inside there from Daniel Payes. This is for 6th place in the GT3M class, and well, in the end, Payes not quite able to make the move happen. Goes very, oh my goodness, and Daniel Payes almost losing it there, coming out of Ravazza 2, taking too much apex curve, and the car getting caught up on that curve. You can see that even the Ford Mustang could go around when you push it too hard, and Daniel Payes losing out there as Rob Windsor now trying to recover his way back into this race once again after an earlier incident. We're all over the back here. Darren Sharples, can he find his way past his fellow countryman? And the answer is no, he can't, and has to let Sharples take the lead of that position as they make the way through the Tambrella chicane, and going in very deep is Daniel Payes. They're going to be on scalding hot tyres right now, and Payes trying to brake as late as he dared there. Well, those tyres are not going to want to stop the car anytime soon. But that was a lot to unpack in a very short period of time. Thankfully, we've got a couple of replays coming up to explain what happened, and we start off then with what happened to Darryl Norkett. Now this was into the Tosa hairpin in the number 86. He just survived all the madness around him. Comes into the braking zone. That's Rob Windsor on what is outside there. So Norket just goes straight on. Windsor just loses his own volition. So both of them are having mistakes at practically the same time, but completely separate. And then Norket had to rejoin. And that's how Windsor lost all those places. So that explains the story there as we return to your live racing pictures. And well, as we do, well, we're almost at the halfway point of this race, but it's definitely been a chaotic race so far. But speaking of less chaos, meanwhile in the GT3 Pro class, leading by 3.3 seconds at the moment, GT3 overall is Erik Røseth. As you look behind him, however, he's leading ahead of Kasper Brøckner, who's still got Sean Cranny Swash keeping him honest behind. And then looking a bit further back, well, Tom Weston's in fourth for the GT3 Pros. Fifth of their class is Jack Barker. But right now, Barker's down to try and pick his way past what is James Foster, the GT3 AM leader, as we do see the GTP there from Empire Motorsport just make its way on through rather subtly. And that was Joe Newman, I do believe. And now you do have Joshua Wilson queuing up behind this as Barker finds his way past James Foster. That is for GT3 overall position, not for class position, but that will be an important stepping stone for Barker if he wants to chase after the rest of the GT3 Pros that are further up the order. And it buys him now a car between himself and Nathan Anstis, who's been closing gradually over the last couple of laps. First the drivers make the way out. Nathan Anstis, meanwhile, further back here in what is number 96. He's had a difficult race so far, the Anstis races driver, and we're just trying to keep himself up high in terms of making those places as quickly as he can. But the problem will be here at this point in the fact that he is one of the last GT3 Pro drivers. There's only 7 GT3 Pros in attendance today. Darren Sharp has been the only driver behind it. As we do see Darren Norket, they're going very deep on the inside, all the way to the outside of the Piratella corner, and Norket bringing it back together. And definitely some GTP drivers here are finding those braking zones are proving treacherous as this circuit is getting hotter and hotter. But from the heat of the circuit to right now the heat of battling, well, in the LMP2 class, we haven't really shown you the race leader. It's James Ibram. Here he is in the 903, championship leader and roaring away. He has got the best part of what is a 5-second gap to second place man, also for Effect Simulations, albeit from their sister teams on the grid, whether it be the base team, Club Sport or Carbon, and it's Emil Koopmans, his teammate, as they make the way on through Tamburello, just as we do see there the overall GTP leader, Patrik Thomsen, making his way around, and I believe that's Matthew Cheverton, who's almost a lap down now, having recently served a pit stop. But the point being that Emil Koopmans has got Øystein Herfjord for close company, and James Ibram's been allowed to run away to a degree at this time, albeit strategy could see things close back up at some point. We'll have to wait and see. But in the LMP2 class right now, it's the battle for second that's really taking the spotlight rather than the battle for first. But you never know what can happen as the distance goes on. Indeed, all can change within the space of a lap, if not a space of a corner or two. But as I try to make the way on through, that's going to be some space brought for Koopmans there by his fellow Effect Simulations driver in the GTP, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Austin William Campbell, who's trying to find his way on through there in the BMW M V8 Hybrid, as he chased after Patrik Thomsen. And the gap between Thomsen and William Campbell has in fact continued to oscillate quite significantly over the last few laps. And to give you an idea of how that gap has looked, the time delta in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, as we can see there, albeit I'm not quite sure what's happened to our time delta in what is the run there of lap number 13. It does seem to have segued a very different way, but what you can see is at least over what has been the last 4 laps, that gap has continued to move back and forth between 3 seconds and 2.2 seconds. So therefore the traffic continues to make sure this gap does not quite stabilise, and right now it goes one way then the other, but it is still Patrik Thomsen leading this race, albeit not by a huge margin, but just enough to potentially feel slightly comfortable, if he can ever feel comfortable, to be fair, in that Ferrari versus the fast charging BMW of William Campbell. But as our drivers make the way onto another lap, well, meanwhile, we do come back to the LMP2 class, and James Ibram still chasing after Ryan Walker. This has been a common battle, these two fighting for 5th place in the LMP2 class. There's not really been too much difference between them. Ryan Walker does seem to have a little bit of a pace disadvantage in clear air versus Ibram. However, he's using traffic well, and also he does seem to have that LMP2 set up to have a bit more straight line speed compared to Ibram, who does gain in the toe, but not enough. And Walker just knows to have enough space by the end of the straights to not have to worry about battles under braking. But as they make the way on through what is at Tosa hairpin, well, right now Ibram pushing hard, and that's one of the things that Walker can also take a little bit of inspiration from. If he looks in his rearview mirror, he may notice that Ibram is sliding a little bit into those braking zones, particularly the heavier braking zones, so he's using more tyre life, and that will be giving Walker just a bit more comfort that when they do go into the second stint, if not all 4 tyres are replaced, therefore he will have the better tyre life compared to his rival, albeit Ibram getting very close there for Ibram and Arale. But the thing is, it's one thing to get close, it's another thing to pass, and passing Ibram and Arale is very hard to do. You've practically got to be side by side on entry into the complex in order to make it happen as they head through the auto chicane. but from two LMP2 drivers that are close, but not quite close enough to fight at the moment, to LMP2 drivers who also quite close to fight here. More Emil Koopmans does have Øystein Herfjord practically on his back now as they make the way onwards, and we ride on board and look back from the second place LMP2 904, and the FX Simulations Club Sport driver having to go defensively into turn number 1. This will put him on the inside into 2 potentially. Well, no, it won't, because he's had what is there the Steve Hughes Ford Mustang in the end already interrupt that flow of battle and force him onto a single line. So Øystein Herfjord close, but not close enough to try and attempt to move here, and a little bit of traffic helping out the Dutchman as they make the way in towards the Villeneuve chicane. Sparks flying from the under tray there. You can briefly see the 904. That's how low it is to the ground. And as they come in towards Tosa Hairpin, will there be a change here? The answer is no, there won't. And Herford's just having to wait and watch. He can, of course, be doing some fuel saving rather than looking to go on the attack immediately. And that's always one big question that might be in the mind of Koopmans is my rival doing some fuel saving behind, given the fact he doesn't seem to outpass me on circuit? And fuel saving can be worth the best part of 2 to 3 seconds in the pits, depending on how much you do. And by doing so, you may be able to just leap ahead based on strategy. But of course, that will give James Ibram a little bit more space with which to lead this race and potentially lead it off into the eventual checkered flag. But from them, we do look back to the battle of Walker versus Acklam here as they come down in towards the Aquamarale complex, and will Acklam once again within 2 tenths on entry, but has to back off slightly there, the natural concertina effect, or he's going to get a better exit this time. Walker goes defensive initially before they make the way into Alta, so Walker a little bit worried there about his exit, and Acklam will take some pride in that. He'll take some knowledge from it and know, okay, I might be able to put some more pressure on in Aquamarale, because it does seem as though right in front of me is not as confident as he perhaps previously was in how good an exit he can get through there. And as they come down to Razza 1, it's all about these little microscopic things you have to observe at these speeds as a driver to know exactly when your rival might be looking vulnerable versus when they might be looking stronger than you. And if you can pick up on those bits, if you can maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, that's how you make places in battles as close as this. But speaking of close battles, we've got 2 Ford Mustangs here. It's the battle of V8 muscle as they roar their way down. It's Kasper Brøckner in the old dudes in cars car ahead of what is Sean Cranny Swash for Ansi Sports, and right now the number 11 trying to hold off the 117 for a bit longer. Erik Røseth only 3 seconds up the road from these two, so really is a fight between them. And then who's got the right to chase down Erik Røseth if they can chase him? Well, Sean Cranny Swash decides, okay, enough's enough, I'm coming into the pit lane. I think that's a good call there from Cranny Swash to really dictate the strategy to Brøckner, which is I'm going for the undercut. Now Brøckner will need to respond on this next lap. You can imagine the fuel tanks in these GT3s, they will be heading towards dry soon, given the fact they started on 60% fuel tanks. They won't be completely dry. We do normally see the GT3 fuel tank go the best part of what can be up to approximately 40 minutes, depending on the circuit. Now, it sure is used lap to lap on the circuit before it does need to come on in. But right now for Brøckner, he'll know that from this point onwards, when we do have Sean Cranny Swash come out, if he comes out in clear traffic, which we'll see if he does so here, as the blimp camera will give you a perspective on how he makes his way out the pit lane. And what's he got around him? Well, I think for Cranny Swash, in fact, as I look at that circuit map in the top right corner of our collective screen, ladies and gentlemen, well, you'll notice that he's got a lot of traffic feeding its way through down the start-finish straight, and, well, that traffic quite spaced out at the moment, but I would imagine as he makes way along, he is going to be safe for now, albeit that is going to be a bit of a concern that he does have some GTPs and LMP2s coming up, but I think they are going to gradually materialise, so therefore, it's not going to cost him as much time as perhaps it could, but I think this pit stop from Cranny Swash, whilst it's been a good idea in principle, it may actually come back to bite him slightly should we have Brøckner react to it and decide to pit at the end of this lap that they've gone on to. If he does, then it would be a really good call in the fact that what you essentially do is say to Cranny Swash, no way are you going to be making any progress against me, as meanwhile Simon Hartley continues to subvert progress for Darren Sharp as he looks to the inside there into Tosa Hairpin, couldn't quite find it, and Sharp was having to back out there, as meanwhile in the pit lane have come James Connolly and Rob Windsor from 6th and 7th in the GT3 AM class. I think they were a bit further up the order, in fact, let me correct myself there, but that's where they've come back out of the pit lane, so therefore we'll have to wait and see where the rest of the GT3 AM class comes out in the whole mix. Well, I believe, in fact, they are coming out in their correct positions, because we have had some pit stops already. And as soon as I said about Kasper Brøckner needing to come in, he does so. He decides to react to Sean Cranny Swash. He knows his race is for P2, so he's in, as is none other than Jack Barker, who comes in behind in the Acura NSX Evo for Made for Racing. And well, after a race which has really been spent chasing after and passing James Foster, the GT3 AM leader, he missed his pit box. He went very deep on his pit box, and that's going to cost him a lot of time there, and that is going to be frustrating. That is going to cost him the best part of 1 to 2 seconds, and that time is absolutely absolutely crucial. But as we do see there, where Sharple's having to let GTPs on through, well, meanwhile, what about the battle then between Kranislash and Brøckner? There's Brøckner leaving the pit lane gradually, although he's got a very long way to go. Where is Sean Kranislash in all of this? And the answer is, there he is at the bottom of your screen as our blimp camera tries to catch up to him. So where is going to be Brøckner here in all this? There's Kasper Brøckner, and well, Kranislash is going to do it. He's going to go up the inside here and just about nails it. It's very late on the brakes there for Sean Kranislash, but that moves him into effectively what we believe is second place in the GT3 Pro class. Once Tom Weston's made his pit stop and Erik Røseth, we believe Røseth will come back out ahead of these guys, albeit you never know, to be fair. If he has a poor pit stop, he could suddenly fall right into this battle. But right now, Sean Kranislash is coming up through that GT3 Pro field. If he can't do it on circuit, he'll do it via strategy and vice versa. As we see a mistake for Kasper Brøckner, who has the GTP field coming on through, and these GTPs continue to muscle their way through. Same for the LMP2s. So right now, it's getting very testy between what is all of our classes here as they negotiate each other. Oh, goodness me! As I think there was a slight rub there between Brøckner and the car of, I think that was Joshua Wilson making its way through. Darren Arquette's trying to give chase there, and well, Brøckner doesn't want any part of it. Tom Weston's into the pit lane as I look at my commentary booth window. Meanwhile, Erik Røseth, he's decided he's not coming in at the moment. I think he's deciding, you know what, I'm only going to come in when everybody else has pitted. James Foster, meanwhile, is in from the lead of the GT3 AM class, and as he makes way on down here, well, surely this has got to be a straightforward stop. He's the only GT3 AM driver yet to pit. As he makes his way along, with the only other driver being Simon Hartley, I should correct myself, albeit Hartley further down, and you would imagine that he will come out a bit further back once the pit stops have completed. But right now, it is a happy day for James Foster, and all he's got to do at this point is get the car to the finish line. But meanwhile, from a happy day for one GT3 AM driver to a frustrating day for this man, we ride on board here with Rob Windsor for UK Sim Racing Irvine as he comes on down in towards what will be Aquinarale. He's still chasing after there, what is James Connolly, and right now the 812 driver really having a difficult day in the office as he makes way on out of Aquinarale and up towards the auto chicane. Windsor's just not connecting the dots together right now, and it's days like this which really will be a test of his championship campaign's mettle, in the fact that after the opening 2 rounds that seemed to go all in the right direction, Long Beach it all went wrong. There wasn't any pace out there for Windsor, and here today at Imola as well, it seems as though there's been mistakes, there's a lack of pace as well, and it's all adding together here, and it's not in a good way. But to be fair, that's not to downgrade him or say that he can't be championship material, but he really is hitting a few speed bumps in the road. There's a big slide coming through Ravazza 1, upsetting the balance of the car and going wide that Ravazza 2. This McLaren just not in a happy place for its driver as they head up towards the next lap. Into the pit lane has come Alex Brown from the GT3 AM class, and we also have had Erik Røseth make his way into the pit lane as our drivers roar the way on past the static cameraman. And oh my good lord, now that is very, very close there, and I believe that was the GTP there, unless I'm very much mistaken, of what was not Ryan Davis there, Nathan Foster threading the needle. Well, there's one way to do it, and then the other. That is the Moses manoeuvre in a GTP for multi-class traffic. But meanwhile, so this is going on. Rob Windsor there being passed by Daniel Pays after getting ahead of him. Well, Daniel Pays has come back at him there, and right now Windsor going backwards down to 7th place. He's got Simon Hartley right behind him, and we're going to get a replay of how that all played out very shortly, because Daniel Pays making his way on through and doing so rapidly. But right now Rob Windsor, it's going from good to bad to worse as quickly as that, as they make the way up the hill in towards Piratella, but coming on for into left-hander. And well, as they do so, just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the YouTube chat, this stream of course in this series being sponsored by Virtual Racing School, and if you are looking to get your hands potentially on a 1-month Virtual Racing School subscription, all you need to do in the YouTube chat is type out the letters VRS, much like the abbreviation of the brand, and well, you'll enter automatically into a raffle draw, and we will announce the winners at the end of the racing today for that, for a 1-month VRS subscription. But coming from that back to the here and now in terms of what is the battling here, and right now we do have always a 4-way fight for 5th place in the GT3 AM class, and that's between James Connolly, Daniel Pays, Rob Windsor and Simon Hartley. They're all there in your camera, and the only odd one out is the car in front of James Connolly, the number 46 driver, who has got, where's the 777, Darren Sharples, the old dudes in cars McLaren. That's the GT3 Pro 7th place car, and well, the last of the GT3 Pros at the moment, and a driver who's just not having a happy day at the office, whichever way you look at it. But as they roar their way down towards turn number 1, with 22 minutes left on the clock, well, most of the pit stops are complete now. The only pit stops are outstanding are for what is our top 6 LMP2 drivers, who will continue to charge around there. It looks like James Ibram getting very close there. On the inside, James Connolly. Then to the outside to inside. Oh, but where's Sharples? And the two just avoid some contact. We've also got some GTPs in the pit lane. Williams, Newman and Wilson have all coming in as I look at my Conte booth window. But that's going to be a move on the inside there on Connolly by Pays. And Daniel Pays makes his way through there. The old dudes in cars try, takes one place. And then he's going to try and go around his teammate to make another. But I think Sharples there is not going to let it go too easy. I don't think he recognises he's coming on through. But you can imagine he'll probably be on the radio to say to him right now, Dad, can you please let me go? I've got pace. I want to get away from this GT3 AM battle because right now it's absolutely hazardous to the health of my race. And I think Sharples may not be aware of that as they all make the way through Piratella corner. But changes come quick and fast in this GT3 AM battle as they make the way on down through the corners. And well, brilliant batting so far, no doubt about it. And they're keeping it as clean as they possibly can. But from these drivers for a battle which is going in terms of strategy, Ryan Walker's in the pit lane right now. And why is that important? Because he's fighting with this man, James Ibram, who's just recently found his way through that 5th place GT3 AM battle, and as he makes his way out of the auto chicane and down towards Ravazza, where's he going to be versus Walker by the time they both serve their pit stop? As we do see there a quick peek from what was Matthew Cheverton in the 390 Porsche 963 GTP. Well, no change there, but Ackland makes his way out of the corner. So we look to the blimp camera as he makes one to the start-finish straight. Meanwhile, Ryan Walker is already on the pit lane exit. So that shows you how much that traffic has cost Ackland in terms of time. It's cost him the best part there of what has been about 5 seconds in terms of overall time. So right now, Ryan Walker's going to come back out, and I think he's going to feel very happy because this effectively means that he's bought himself some breathing room with which to try and make sure that Ackland does not catch up to him in the closing stage of this race. And Walker has nailed this on strategy to potentially take what would be a top 5 in the LMP2 class, and that would be a great haul for him as he makes his way in towards Tosa Hairpin. But with that in mind, let's take a look back at the battling that we saw any moments ago for 5th place in the G3 AM class. And we start off with some battling from James Connolly versus Simon Hartley as he tried to start making his way up through the field. And this was on lap number 21, and I believe this was on pit lane exit where it got tasting. You will see here was Nathan Foster go between the two of them, absolutely timing that to perfection, and will Connie up the inside there, Simon Hartley, and getting that done. And we'll stay with this replay here because now our cameraman looking at Daniel Pays, who made his way around the outside of Simon Hartley, was all out of sorts coming out of the corner, and then Pays going up the inside here of Rob Windsor into Villeneuve and making that place very quickly. And that's how the places were exchanged there, and Windsor and Hartley just being caught out by the traffic and also the closeness of this GT3M field, and in the end, by being caught unawares, it cost them many places indeed. But meanwhile, returning to your live racing, and as we do, well, we do have here the run in towards the auto chicane, and that is Darren Sharples being passed by James Connolly. So a change of places there between two McLarens. Daniel Pays, of course, had already got past Sharples, his teammate for Old Dudes in Cars, but now James Connolly has been able to make his way past the GT3 Pro driver, and Rob Windsor is the next one up to try and pass Sharples, and it'll be Simon Hartley after that as they all queue up trying to find the places. And for what is Sharples right now, I think this is one of those races whereby it really is just keeping his head down and just getting it home and getting the points on the board and serving it as a drop score potentially later on in the season. As whilst the drivers were all the way on through, our race leader overall, Patrik Thomsen, the GTP class, where he makes his way out of the pit lane there and retakes the lead, given the fact he's one of the last GTPs to take their mandatory pit stop. And well, where is Austin William Campbell? He's on the start-finish stage, just crossed the timeline to go on to what for them is lap number 28. So Patrik Thomsen still has the best part of what is 8 seconds of a lead, if not a little bit more. In fact, I think it's more towards 9 seconds now when I get the numbers coming in. And well, that traffic, that's going to cost Thomsen some time, but I think he'll still be very happy with the fact that he's bought himself the space, and that space will help him give himself time to clear this traffic. Albeit saying that, when they're fighting as hard as they are right now, well, that could prove to be a bit challenging there for Thomsen. He's going to find his way through. That will cost him some time on that line coming through towards the hairpin as these GT3s all continue to fight each other, but brilliant fighting between them as they roar the way on through in towards Piratella. And Sharples still keeping Windsor and Hartley behind, albeit there. I think right now it's going to be a question of when, not if, Windsor and Hartley are going to try and look for the move once again. Meanwhile, through strategy, one GT3 battle we haven't talked about is this battle once again. And you may be thinking, is that Jack Barker behind James Foster, the GT3M leader? Yes, it is. The 5th place GT3 Pro driver has lost out in the pits versus what is your GT3M leader, Foster, and therefore it does mean he's now got to do it again. But the problem is he's now got the pressure of this man behind him, Nathan Anstis, who is on the attack here as they make the way on through Tamburello. And Anstis would love to take that 5th place off of Barker, albeit he's still got to close that gap down a little bit more. But Barker has definitely had a few laps where the pace has gone against him, and well, the strategy is then completely confounded that as they bounce and hop their way all the way through the Villeneuve chicane. And in towards Tosa here, and well, the 96 of Anstis right now, he's like a shark in the water. He's seen the blood, and he wants to take a bite there of that 5th place as they roar the way out of the hairpin. We do know that Acura can be very strong coming out of the quarters, given its electronics versus the low-speed performance of this McLaren. So they're two machines that do have some similar strengths in terms of where they'll be able to show those strengths, low-speed and medium-speed quarters, and how they get the lap time is where the differences will come in. And it will come down to the driver maximising the abilities of their chosen machinery in the setups they've opted to run. But Anstis right now in the chase, and knowing that he does have what is the best part of 8 tenths to close down on Barker, and Barker's still over the back of Foster, and I think Barker will be very keen to pass James Foster as quickly as he can, but of course catching is one thing, passing is another, as the late great Murray Walker once said. I think that's exactly what Barker's having trouble with right now, as he's all over the back of Foster here, coming in towards 13, and then Ravazza 1 and 2. Well, he could potentially go for it here, but 2.5 tenths back, that's going to be a lunge and a half, so instead he decides to wait his turn and wait for that potential move going into the next corner. Albeit again so close they can reach and touch the rear wing of what is that McLaren as they make the way off the corner, and here they go then as we look back from the rear of the GT3 leader, and Barker thinks about pulling out of the toe immediately but decides not. He wants to be so close he can practically sniff the exhaust fumes, then he'll go for it. Foster here will just mind his line. Barker's going to go to the inside here. This is going to be an important move for Barker because it buys him some space, but on the brakes then you see Barker's not quite cleared this. They're going to go too wide through Tamburello, but Indian Foster does back off there. He could have extended that into the apex, but I think realising I don't need to battle with this driver, and Nathan Anstis right now is going to make his way on through as well. But for Anstis, this has worked out a treat because now he's closed the gap to Barker. He's practically slashed it in half, albeit that run wide there coming out of Villeneuve, that is not going to help, and that's going to open the gap back up. So Barker is given a lifeline there, but right now for Nathan Anstis, well, he's now got an open goal opportunity. He's just got to chase after it. From them, meanwhile, in the LMP2 class, coming out the same corner only moments later, Tom Farr and Ben Cullen having a bit of a coming together here, albeit Cullen, who did make a lot of progress earlier on, he's fallen all the way back, and right now trying to battle his way past the DDK Racing Team machine, but right now the 171's holding on here as Cullen's looking one way, then the other, as they make the way on down in towards Aqua Minerale. We ride on board on the 906 for Avec Simulations, and Cullen, well, I think he's close, there's no doubt about it, but where's he going to go for the move is the question that we need the answer to, and well, could he go for it here in towards the Auto Chicane? We haven't seen many moves into the Auto Chicane today, and I think for good reason for the most part, in the fact in these prototype machines, or indeed in what was the LMP2s and then the GT prototypes, the GTPs, there's not really a long enough run to go for it on the brakes, and the GT3s, it's a slightly different story, but right now Cullen's so close, he can think about it at any corner. He's going to go for it into Ravazza. That is going to be a bit of a late move here, however, it's going to put Farr under pressure, and as Farr makes his way on around the outside, well, Cullen gives him the space there. He's not going to try and elbow him out the way. Brilliant racing between them, but that upsets, of course, Farr's line going onto the start finish straight, but he will have the help of a little bit of a slipstream off of while our GT3's in front. That's your GT3 AM leader he's taking the toe off of, so Cullen right now, well, no, he's not going to get as quick of a run down the straight as what he would like into turn number 2, but he's going to look up the inside here as they make their way into the braking zone. Goes all in for it. Now, will he be able to get there? The answer is no, and a little bit of a sideways wiggle there for Tom Farr on the rear end, just a bit of power oversteer, and as they make the way through, well, that's Helder Gonçalves who's caught up to the back of this, so Gonçalves becomes player 3 in the situation. Patrik Thomsen, your oval leader, makes it 3 wide, surely not, into Villeneuve, and in the end, Thomsen backs out there. Farr's able to stay ahead for a brief moment, but Thomsen, I think, would have been absolutely having his heart in his chest or in his mouth then, in the fact that could have gone so wrong and seen him drop out the GTP lead all of a sudden. But as they come out of Tosa right now, Farr is playing the traffic absolutely perfectly here as he makes it. So Cullen now as to tuck it behind where it's Thomsen or himself. They make the way ahead of Nathan Anstis, and Helder Gonçalves can't find his way through. So these LMP2 drivers right now is absolutely nitty-gritty, is grueling between them as they try to carve the way for the traffic. You see Farr flashing his lights there to Jack Barker. Barker immediately just straight lines on and said, okay, I'm getting out your way, I don't want any part of this, but he hopped his way over the gravel. That's going to damage the suspension of that Acura. That's going to let Nathan Anstis get alongside him. Will he be able to make the move? Well, Cullen's on the inside there. They go side by side, and Cullen goes on through as Farr doesn't have anything to offer in terms of defence there, and Cullen whittles him down, and now Helder Gonçalves looks to the move as Miguel Barker has been able to keep Anstis behind going into the Auto Chicane. That GT3 won his Pro P5 battle, but here comes Gonçalves up the inside, trying to do what Cullen could not do on the previous lap. They're too wide through Ravazza 1, they're too wide into the apex of Ravazza 2. It's going to be a drag race out the corner, but surely Farr will get the better run, given he's on that wider line. He can pick up the throttle more aggressively, and Gonçalves has to back off there, giving it everything. Meanwhile, comes that GT3 Pro battle. Here comes Anstis, then he's got the better run at Ravazza 2. He's got the toe as well. Well, the GTP's in front of him for a brief moment. They're going to be side by side here as they make the way underneath the gantry. And as they come in towards Tamburello, where it's going to be side by side all the way under braking here. And it looks as though that McLaren's just got it on the brakes. And Nathan Anstis, what a brilliant move around the outside. And Barker tried to make him go the distance. And in the end, Anstis says, I can go that plus plenty more under braking. And he gets it done. Nathan Anstis up into 5th now in the GT3 Pro class. But Jack Barker doing everything to keep him behind. And also keeping in mind the traffic there. Fair racing between them. And also fair racing for 6th place in the LMP2 class between Cullen, Farr and Gonçalves. And it's not quite over yet either as they make the way up the hill. And well, it's going to take a brief pause because of the fact you do have a GTP making its way in between the two of them, and that is the GTP, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, of Joshua Wilson carving its way through. In fact, I should correct myself there. That's the GT3 of John Williams making it on through. GTP, I should say. And as they roar the way out at Quinarale, well, right now, things will calm down for a brief moment before Elder Gonçalves gets a clear shot here. What will be the 1-7-1 again? But I have Darren Orquette going up the inside of them first. And will Farr in the end has to respect the fact it's there. And Gonçalves gets the better run, but gets too close on corner exit. Pratti taps the rear of Farr's car. And as they make the way onwards down towards turns 14 and 15, Ravazza 1 and 2. Well, right now, Gonçalves all over the back of his rival. Would he go for it again here? No, he won't. What he'll do instead is just simply tuck him behind, and I think this time recognise, okay, you know what, it's not worth going too wide for Ravazza because if I'm on that inside line, yes, it looks great for the TV cameras, but it doesn't give me the best possible run. Instead, what I'll do, I'll just tuck in here and look for the run down towards Tamburello, but the problem is, Farr is really good on exit there at Ravazza 2 this time around, and that gap opens up to 3/10, and Gonçalves will close. He'll continue to close. He'll get a little bit closer, but it's not close enough as they head into the braking zone, and that's how they will stay as they make the way left, right, left. And Farr right now, just open that gap back up to 4 attempts there. Gonçalves really has had a rough race, no doubt about it, but he is throwing everything at this one in order to try and gain a couple more places before all's said and done after those early instants. Meanwhile, whilst all that's been happening, that battle for 5th place, well, now it's the battle for 4th place in the LMP2 class, and I believe, I'm trying to understand who's fallen out of this. I believe it's Cullen who's fallen behind it, I should understand there, because we were wondering why Ben Cullen was battling for 6th earlier on. Well, right now, Ryan Walker, who found himself battling with James Ibram in the first stint, well, the traffic has not been too kind to him on this lap. He's caught up behind what is Sean Cranny Swash there for the Ansi Sports Machine. And well, right now, Walker's trying to keep Ackland behind him as they make the way onwards towards the auto chicane. And well, Walker there correctly identifying, I might as well just hold the inside line and go around that GT3. Then I'll get the race 9 into the auto chicane. Meanwhile, Ackland being a little bit behind in terms of that run. Onwards they'll go in towards what will be Ravazza 1 and 2 shortly. And Walker still staying alive for now in that battle. But for how long can he hold on there? Can he hold on all the way to the end? That would be an achievement and then some, because he's being pushed every step of the way as they make the way into the final 10 minutes of this race, plus that final lap. But right now they will have a little bit of an interruption, and they will have Austin William Campbell's 2nd place GTP get between them, and William Campbell still trying to chase after Patrik Thomsen, albeit that gap standing at almost 9 seconds. And on that previous lap, where it was a 30.47 for Patrik Thomsen, for Austin William Campbell, it was a 32.0. Traffic was involved in that lap, but it goes to show as well that gap is still going in the wrong direction for our 2nd place BMW MV8 hybrid driver for Effect Simulations, and he can't bring it down, it would seem, at this time, but you never know what can happen until the very end. Meanwhile, coming back to GT3 Pro battling, well, as soon as we left this battle, well, Barker's decided to go battling once again, and well, they go 3 wide there as we do see one of our GTPs make its way on through, but holding the thought and the focus towards our GT3 Pro drivers. Well, Barker gets close, but not close enough. That Acura doesn't have the brakes, that McLaren, and I don't just mean that in terms of the fact 2 different sets of brake discs on the 2 different cars, but the fact the braking distance there for what is Anstis just seems to be a lot more comfortable in terms of how late he can brake versus the 163 Acura. And well, as they make the way out of the corners and up towards what will be Tosa, I don't think we're going to see Barker looking to the inside here. I think he's going to have to try and find a way to get under the skin of Anstis and get Anstis to make a mistake, which is not easy to do as we ride on board the front of the made for a race in Acura, and onwards they go in towards what will be at the Piratella corner. They're very close between these two as they make the way on through, and well, these two fighting for a spot inside the top 5, not only of this race group, but also in their championship. And as they come down in towards Aquaminarale, through the double right and into left they go. Anstis there, a lot more aggressive, but you can see that aggression causing the rear to slide a little bit loose. Barker, meanwhile, really protective of the car. I think he's worried about tyre temperatures, and Anstis, meanwhile, I think the way he's having to drive is on the limit to get this pace out of that McLaren. So 2 very different approaches. Barker closing up there for Ulta just by simply taking taking a much more progressive line, whereas Anstis really drilling the car into braking, really forcing it into those corners. It works at some points around the lap, at others it doesn't. Tosa hairpin, you can really force the car in, but right now Barker just taking his time, making his way closer and closer as they come on through Ravatsa 2. This is going to be a really good exit here for Barker. He could be closer than this, and as they make the way on the start finish straight, well, they're going to have some GTB traffic make its way on around. However, Barker will bide his time, surely. He will get so close here, and you can see in the bottom right corner screen, he's less than a tenth as they make the way underneath the gantry, but he's got to pick the right time to pull out and wait to see what Anstis wants to do here. Well, Anstis is going to stay on that racing line. Barker decides to follow him this time around, so not going for it, just tucking in, but look how close he's staying here. Barker right now has got a golden opportunity. He's just got to keep this pressure on, and surely Anstis is going to wilt under it. Alternatively, Barker can look for a move. Well, either way right now, if you're Nathan Anstis, he's doing a phenomenal job as the McLaren driver, just to simply not let Barker get into his head whatsoever, and credit where it's due to a 96 driver. He's absolutely holding on to that P5 position and not worrying about what's behind him. I think he knows at the end of the day, yes, you can be that close to me, but you still got to get alongside me, and that's the thing you can't do at the moment. But as they head up the rise and in towards Oi Pelotelo corner, we're going to stay with this battle for at least this lap, giving us the closest battle out on circuit. And Anstis here still comfortably holding on, it would seem, as they make the way for the middle section of the lap. And this is where we do see that McLaren is stronger. From Tosa all the way through to the exit of Aquinarale, he does seem to have a bit of a run on Barker, who goes a bit deep there off Aquinarale. Intriguing. That's going to cause the gap to open up to what is the best part of 7/10 now. So therefore it's going to reset the battle between them for a brief moment. And that is where Anstis is able to maintain his advantage in this back and forth as they roar the way out. But again, now coming out of what is the Alta chicane, that is where Barker is strong. He gains 3/10 through there alone, and as they head down towards Ravatsa, where it will of course be the concertina between them, that's always an effect you'll see, but Barker having some traffic up the inside, and that will be the number 52 GTP of what is Nathan Foster carving its way through, and that 963 from Empire Motorsport. Whilst it's down in 6th place in the GTP class, it's definitely going to be taking one of the top prizes for the livery on the car as he makes way on through. Nice looking livery there, no doubt about it. But from admiring paint jobs to admiring the battle here, well, Barker a bit too far back to get involved with Anstis this time around, and running out of time as they make the way onto another tour of the circuit under race conditions. But as I head in towards turns 2, 3 and 4, well, meanwhile, the big question some of you may be asking about the battle that we did have earlier on between what was Rob Windsor, James Conley and Daniel Pays and Simon Hartley. Well, that battle has somewhat calmed down now. They are starting to space out from each other, and it is the situation whereby we are seeing what is now, I believe, James Conley settling into 6th place in the G3 AM class, Windsor 7th in it as we see him on screen, and then Simon Hartley's at the back. We have had the unfortunate retirement for Alex Brown, who has had to retire the car a couple of laps, multiple laps ago, in fact, I believe due to damage on the car, so the slow and steady racing driver won't be completing this race, unfortunately. But as they roar onwards with the rest of our drivers here all pushing on to the very end, it's the only retirement we've had from this race. So 35 starters, we're down to 34 runners at the moment, and this race is gradually heading towards its conclusion. But as the drivers make the way on around, we do look to what is Patrik Thomsen, your race leader at the moment, who right now absolutely roaring off into the distance here with 4 minutes left to go, and that gap just gradually creeping outwards to the best part of 10.1 seconds to Austin William Campbell. And as the drivers make their way on through, well, for Patrik Thomsen at this point in time, you'd imagine here now all he needs to do is keep it calm, keep it cool, and not make any mistakes. And that 3 wins in a row that we're talking about at the start of today's program, well, surely that is going to become a reality. But then again, that's why we won't put the commentator's curse on him, just because of the fact anything can happen until it's over. As meanwhile, Austin William Campbell will continue to chase him down, continue to keep honest in terms of lap times, but I think the BMW driver at this point, knowing it's going to require a bit of external intervention if he wants to close it down before all is said and done. And 3rd place in the GTP class, the best part of what is a further 23 seconds back, is John Williams, who, to be fair, has made his way onto this 3rd spot of the podium and hasn't looked back since then. After qualifying 2nd place, Austin William Campbell was the faster driver off the mark and has really shown that over the distance. But Williams, it's going to be another great podium here, and well, the 909 driver will be happy with that one to take it all the way to the checkered flag. We're going back to battling further down the order into the LMP2 class. Well, we do have what is the uphill battle of Helder Gonçalves here as he's all over the back of James Ibram, trying to absolutely breathe down the neck of Ibram as they roar the way on through. I believe there's been some sort of incident for Ibram, or has there been a trip to the pit lane? There was a trip to the pit lane, in fact, for Ibram. That would explain it. So Ibram did have to come in for what was a further stop in the end, as I'm to understand it. and I believe it might even be for a drive-through penalty for instant points, because we haven't got any data to say he stopped a second time, as in actually parked in the pit lane. So I'd say it was a drive-through penalty. So that's released Ryan Walker into a comfortable 4th place, albeit Ben Cullen is closing up on him little by little. But Helder Gonçalves right now just trying to salvage some more points by chasing after Acklam, and we'll keep an eye on this battle of half a second between the two of them. But these are two very fast drivers, but they find themselves to be at the wrong end of the LMP2 field today. Frustrating, but it's been great seeing them try to fight their way through. But going back to Ryan Walker, who's holding on to 4th place in the LMP2 class at the moment. We've got Ben Cullen very fast approaching behind him. On that last lap, Cullen did take 6/10 out of Walker. Given where our race leader is, he's the overall leader, I should say, well, he's making his way in towards Ravazza 1 and 2 at the moment, so he will have at least 1 more, if not 2 more laps to go. And for our LMP2 drivers, I believe that means they will have 2 more laps to go, unless I'm mistaken, and therefore Cullen right now, well, he could potentially be in attacking distance on the final lap if the traffic falls favourably for him, albeit it hasn't fallen favourably this time around, as he's got a GTP in front of him plus a couple of GT3s. He's going to siphon his way out the inside there of Rob Windsor, but he's going to have James Connolly on corner exit here. He'll get very close to, and then he'll pull out of. So he has been able to just about make his way through, but Cullen there definitely having the traffic hit him at the wrong time and causing that gap to open up to Walker back to 2.1 seconds rather than continue to close down. But it is a gap which it is potentially manageable for him to close down come these last couple of laps. But roaring his way on out, there's definitely been a very tricky race day here at Imola with regards to the multi-class traffic, but fantastic all the same. And well, coming to our GT3 class and all of this, well, hold up a second. We've got a slow run in what is Kasper Brøckner here. Now, as he makes way along, that's Tom Weston, who I haven't really talked about all day today, but the DDK Racing Team at Lamborghini Huracan Evo driver has made his way into the 3rd place spot of what is GT3 Pro, and I believe Brøckner had a bit of an off track, and I also suspect there's been a bit of a moment for Kasper Brøckner as well. Now, what exactly has happened between the two of them? Can we get a replay to explain? I think we can, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen, as we do get that replay. Now, this was only moments ago coming out of Piratella corner. He was chasing at the time after Sean Cranny Swage, and there was Weston behind. Makes his way through the first part of Aquamarali, goes wide out there, and the car, in the end, on the grass, just gets escorted to the runoff area, and Weston makes his way through and takes the place, where it's a sudden change, it's a small mistake, and Kasper Brøckner, in the end, through falling off the circuit, falls off of the potential GT3 Pro podium, but he's right back there now, and looking to go on the attack in the closing stages. But as our drivers are all the way through, and our race leader overall has gone on to 1 more lap with only 10 seconds remaining, well, we do have Acklam versus Gonçalves, and this battle finally comes absolutely exploding onto our screens, as there's going to be a bit of a rub between the two of them. Gonçalves on the inside here, and Piratella decides against it, recognising that Acklam's ready to absolutely go all deep into defending on it, and as they make the way in towards Aquamarali, there'll be no change. They will get 1 more lap before they do see that checker flag. Given our race leader right now is yet to actually bring the checker flag out. We're on the white flag lap, but these drivers are well ahead of the race leader. And here they come then 2 wide in towards Alta. Acklam on the inside, Gonçalves on the outside. Gonçalves once again backs out, trying to get Acklam to outbrake himself on that inside line. We will have Nathan Foster in the GTP coming up behind us very shortly. And well, as he does so, will he play a bit of a role inside that battle? No, he won't at the moment at least. But they come down. Gonçalves not close enough to think about a lunge into Ravazza 1 as much as he would love to. But I think that would be an absolute send from long distance. And that would not even be cured with 1 or 2 first-class stamps. But coming out the quarter will meanwhile Nathan Anstis versus Barker, and Barker trying to go around the outside there into Aquamarali, can't quite find it. This will be their final lap because the GTP leader is ahead of them on circuit, and as they roar the way on out of the corner, can Barker look for a move here in towards what will be Alta? And the answer is no, he can't. But looking from them to our race leader was Patrik Thomsen, makes his way out of Ravazza 2. It's been a brilliant race from Thomsen, and as he heads towards the line, he's going to bring a halt to the 3rd place GT3 Pro battle, because Patrik Thomsen will see the checker flag, and he'll take his 3rd victory in the row here for what will be the Williams Sim Racing Academy team, the Ferrari 499, and a brilliant drive as Sean Cranny Swage. Then it will be Tom Weston and Kasper Brøckner complete will be 2nd through to 4th behind in the GT3 Pro category. Then we will have Austin William Campbell come across the line there to finish 2nd in GTP. And then we'll have a little bit of time before we do get your GT3 and winner James Foster, who returns to top form here at Imola. With a brilliant drive there for DCW Racing, the McLaren. What a drive from him, with the best part of 8.5 seconds to Matt Edmondson, who finishes the runner-up there in the GT3 AM category. We've also had James Ibram come across the line already to take LMP2 victory ahead of Øystein Herfjord and Emil Koopmans, and it will be an Effect Simulations 1, 2, 3 in that class across their teams. And well, meanwhile, what about Steve Hughes? He comes on home to a third place finish in GT3 AM and an absolutely solid drive for him, and he'll be absolutely chuffed with that one. As meanwhile, there has been a change between Ryan Walker and I believe Ben Cullen right at the close in the LMP2 class, and Walker has lost out literally on the final lap, and well, we haven't quite seen what's happened. We might be able to get a replay of that before all said and done, but Ben Cullen will take 4th in the LMP2 class, Walker will take 5th in said class, and meanwhile the battle for 5th place, well, the 4th place finisher in the GT3 AM class, there he is, Satinder Dinso. He had a very quiet race. We haven't really talked about him all day in the number 10, but what a drive from him. And then Daniel Pays with your 5th place finisher in the GT3 AM category. But meanwhile, elsewhere, Erik Røseth will come to line, and as he weaves his way, that's 2 in a row for Erik Røseth in a championship campaign that is very much firmly on its way. And the Audi R8 screams across the line of its V10 engine, and Erik Røseth will be very happy with that one. It came late in qualifying to take pole, but after what was the opening stint, he looked untouchable from that point onwards. And well, that brings all of your races to a close. We've got a couple of drives still to finish the race, including Nathan Foster, I think, who's run out of fuel, but he is just going to get to the line there as he will take to that checker flag line. There he goes, and he will be the last of your 34 finishers, ladies and gentlemen, at 7th in the GTP class. As Patrik Thomsen leads the field on round here and into the pit lane. One absolutely brilliant drive there from the Williams Sim Racing Academy driver in the number 1, and that number 1's on the car for a reason, because he really has been the number 1 for the last 3 races in a row, and nobody's been able to stop him, even with Austin William Campbell throwing everything at it. But you can imagine the 905 driver will be happy that he was closer today, and if he can continue to close that gap down, then what could it be when we return from the mid-season break? As James Ibram comes into the pit lane as well, another victory for the Dallara P217 driver, but today it wasn't Lady Luck that helped him out. Indeed, absolutely did the job in qualifying, and from that point onwards, whilst he was chased, he wasn't chased closely enough by the likes of Øystein Herfjord, Emil Koopmans or Ben Cullen, and in the end was able to run away to LMP2 victory. As Tom Farr makes round 3, he's the last of tries to make the way into their pit lane. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And, well, without further ado, here they are as they make the way onto our screen. And here are the results. And as we can see, after what was a brilliant... in fact, as our results are refreshed there for a brief moment, we do have a slight glitch with our timing tower, but as the results are refreshed there for round number 4 of the UK Sim Racing Multiclass League Season 3, as sponsored by Virtual Racing School and brought to you on iRacing here at the Imola Circuit today. Patrik Thomsen taking victory for Williams Sim Racing Academy by the best part of 11.5 seconds over FX Simulation Club Sports Austin William Campbell. John Williams completed your top 3 overall and on the GTP podium there for FX Simulations in a solid drive there by only what was 1.2 seconds over Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport, who chased him every step of the way, but in the end it wasn't quite enough, and Joshua G. Wilson round off the overall top 5 there for FX Simulations, and a bit of a quiet race in the Ferrari. After an early start, we tried to make the progress. In the end, traffic held him back, and that really was the end of his charge through the field. Then 6th, it was Ryan Davis at Empire Motorsport ahead of his teammate Nathan Foster, while lapped down to Matthew Cheverton, Andreas Nordenhoff and Daryl Norquette. Coming on to the LMP2 class, best SP11 overall, and your winner in class was James Ibram for FX Simulations Club Sport. A brilliant drive there ahead of his fellow podium finishers and fellow FX Simulations drivers, FX Simulations Carbon's Øystein Herfjord and FX Simulations Club Sport's Emil Koopmans, and an all FX Simulations 1, 2, 3 and 4 in the class, with Ben Cullen completing the LMP2 top 4. Coming then on to the GT3s. And we will cover the classes specifically very shortly, but continuing our way then into the GT3 category, well, Erik Røseth was your GT3 overall winner and also your GT3 Pro winner with what was a brilliant drive there for WSR Esports in the Audi R8 Evo Mark II machine, ahead of ANSI Sports' Sean Cranley-Swash, who took his best result of the season today in that Ford Mustang GT3, really coming alive over the race distance, Sean Cranley-Swash, and what a drive, and you never know, that could be the sign of more of what's to come. And Tom Weston there, right at the close, with a late mistake from Kasper Brøckner, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo drive for DDK Racing Team, round off the GT3 Pro podium. Coming to the GT3M class, it was 26th overall and a class victory for James Foster for DCW Racing, who really was absolutely faultless and, well, taking that pole position in qualifying by an absolutely sensational margin. He never looked back when we saw the green flag. UK Sim Racing Buttons Matt Edmondson finished runner-up in the GT3M class, 27th overall, and then it was Steve Hughes broke up the McLaren trend on the podium with Ford Mustang for ANSI Sports, making its way there in the number 7 to 28th overall and on the 3rd spot of the GT3 AMs. And well, great to see Ansi Sports taking podiums in their respective GT3 classes. And well, we did unfortunately have the one retirement today, ladies and gentlemen, of what was Alex Brown for 35 starters. Well, the Sloan City racing driver in the end, retiring 21 laps from the end with technical difficulties to the car. So 35 starters, 34 finishers, and how they all boil down in the individual classes, I hear you ask. Well, let's start off with the GTP class then. And as we can see here, in the fast star classes, Patrik Thomsen, your winner for Williams Sim Racing Academy, ahead of Effect Simulations Club Sports Austin William Campbell. Thomsen looked vulnerable in the early stages of the race, and William Campbell was absolutely chasing him down and matching him. But as the distance went on and tyre wear became a factor, it did seem as though the Ferrari driver there, along with traffic seemingly aiding him at a certain point, well, it just didn't quite work out. But still, for the BMW driver Austin William Campbell, he'll take pride in the fact he was able to close that gap up and keep it relatively honest until the closing stages, and therefore that second place, it'll feel as though he's gaining a lot of ground. John Williams rounding off the GTP podium there for Effect Simulations, fending off the charge from Joe Newman right at the close, with the Empire Motorsport driver in turn having a 13-second gap to Joshua G. Wilson, the second of our Ferraris, and the Effect Simulations driver round off the GTP top 5. Ryan Davis was 6th, just ahead of what was his teammate for Empire Motorsport, Nathan Foster, and there was a lap down to Matthew Sheraton for Aztec Racing, Andreas Nordenhoff for Olympus Esports, and Darren Orkett for Racing Forces. And Darren Orkett, despite having some brilliant runs early on in the race, it didn't quite work out in the later stages. And indeed, I think a degree of frustration kicking in there for what was Darren Orkett as time went on. Coming on to the LMP2 class meanwhile, and as we can see here, a victory for James Ibram, the Effect Simulations Club Sport driver, winning by 14.4 seconds over Effect Simulations Carbon's Øystein Herfjord, and really extending that championship advantage now, with Emil Koopmans round off the podium there, and a 1 and 3 for the two teammates for Effect Simulations Club Sport, and a further seconds behind. Ben Cullen, meanwhile, took 4th in the end. I don't think it was the result he wanted. I think he wanted to be on the podium, but still the Effect Simulations driver chasing after that result as long as he possibly could. And Ryan Walker just not quite able to hold on to the top 5 of the LMP2 class, just being pipped to the line on that final lap. But the Altitude 3M Esport driver putting in an absolutely heroic effort to finish inside the top 5 of the LMP2 class. If it wasn't pressure from Ben Cullen, it was the pressure he fended off from James Ibram lap after lap, which will be memorable from today. Tom Farr took 6th place for DDK Racing Team after some brilliant battling with James Ibram and Helder Gonçalves, with Gonçalves there finishing at 7th for Tractix Racing ahead of James Ibram, and then finishing a lap down with Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations Carbon. Then coming on to the GT3 Pro class, and here we can see the story was of Erik Røseth taking that victory, and the only of our GT Pro drivers to finish on what was for them the 36th lap, whereas all others finished on the 35th lap, so he'll be pleased with that, to have taken what is a lap over the field effectively when all is said and done, and an absolutely brilliant drive from him. And well, then it was Sean Cranny Swashy Fish behind the WSR Esports driver for Ansi Sports, taking his first podium of the season, and with that first podium, taking what was his first second place, and what a drive from him. He'll be absolutely pleased with that one, no doubt about it. DDK Racing Team's Tom Weston holding on to 4th for the majority of the race, and then Sonny being promoted to 3rd right at the end with what was that late mistake from Kasper Brøckner. So therefore, sometimes the results just come to you when you least expect it, and for Tom Weston, I don't think he's going to be complaining about that one. Conversely, meanwhile, I think it'll be a frustrating end to the day for Kasper Brøckner, who have been surprised a little bit by Sean Cranny Swash's charge, but then also that late mistake just cost him dear when he didn't need that mistake at the very end. But from the old dudes in cars driver, it was then UK Sim Racing Irvine's Nathan Anstis, who fought hard to finish P5 ahead of Jack Barker, the two of them practically inseparable at the close, with a made for racing driver not quite on the pace today, but finishing at 6th, and then Darren Sharp was last but not least the GT3 Pro drivers in 7th for old dudes in cars. Indeed, Darren Sharp spent a lot of time battling the GT3M class, and we come onto that class last but not least, and we see James Foster for DCW Racing taking victory by 8.6 seconds in the end, just holding that gap to Matt Edmondson all the way over the distance, and the UK Sim Racing Button driver finishing a happy runner-up. Ansi Sports' Steve Hughes took 3rd there in the Ford Mustang in a quiet race for him, ahead of Satinder Deensa, in a race which we didn't really talk too much about for the Tiki Sim Sport driver. Such was the silence of his race, albeit I think the number 10 driver will be very happy to have had a race in silence where he was able to get some good points on the board. And then Daniel Payes rounded off the top 5 there for old dudes in cars, in a bit of a struggle today for the Ford Mustang driver, particularly when he had to fight back and forth with UK Sim Racing Button and UK Sim Racing Irvine's James Connolly and Rob Windsor, and also Simon Hartley for Team DWR and Sim Coach setups. Alex Brown, meanwhile, the sole retiree from today, 16 laps down and taking 9th, but classified as a non-finisher. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the walkthrough of all the race results from today. And without further ado, before we do make our way to what will be In preparation for our post-round interviews, well, the circuit may fall silent here at the Imola Circuit, but it does mean it is time for us to conduct what is our giveaway announcements. And, well, without further ado, it does mean that we are now going to bring what is all of our giveaways to a close in terms of being able to enter into them. So we do then cut over to what is our subscription draw screen. So we start off with the 3-month draw. Now, this one, of course, is for all of our drivers who managed to finish in the GT3 AM class and finish this race today. So that means that when we do interpret the results, we've only got one driver who ended up retiring from the race in the GT3 AM class, and it was Alex Brown. So for the purposes of transparency, what we will do is we'll put all the drivers' names in on screen, but then you'll notice that we will remove Alex Brown as he was a non-finisher. So therefore we have James Foster, Daniel Payes, Matt Edmondson, Steve Hughes, Satinder Deanser, Rob Windsor, James Collins, Simon Hartley. And without further ado, let's spin the wheel for the 3-month subscription draw. And it is going to be Simon Hartley, ladies and gentlemen, who has taken what is that 3-month subscription away with him from Imola today. Congratulations to Simon Hartley. And what was a battle-intense race, no doubt about it. Then coming on to our 2-month subscription draw. And as we can see here, we're now going to be doing all the drivers who finished this round in the GTP, LMP2 and GT3 Pro classes. So give us a brief moment and we will pop all the names in. And that will be, of course, all of our drivers who finished the race outside of the GT3 AM class, of which they all did. So we'll put all those names up on screen for you. And there they all are. And without further ado, let's roll the wheel from our 26 entrants and see who takes it. And it's going to be Erik Røseth, your GT3 Pro winner, who also wins a 2-month subscription from VRS. And then lastly, coming on to what will be our giveaway draw for the 1-month subscription in the YouTube chat. And we've got 3 drivers here, or 3 names here. Satinder Deanser, Simon Hartley and Alex Brown. Let's choose a winner. And it's going to be Alex Brown who wins once again. He won, I believe it was in the round 2 broadcast, and he takes another subscription away from here today. And congratulations to Alex Brown. He gets another month subscription. Well done to him. So that brings to a close all of our raffle draws, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll continue to do more of those when we do return for round number 5 of the championship. And with that, we are now going to step away, and we'll be back in approximately 5 to 8 minutes time for our post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them. We will see you very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews. And today we're going to be hearing from two of our stars in the GT3 classes before coming to our LMP2 back-to-back winner of James Ibram. Albeit, we're going to sandwich our LMP2 winner between our GT3 drivers, in actual fact. And we're going to start off by hearing from the man today who seems to be absolutely on it to take second place in the GT3 Pro class, Sean Cranley-Swash for Antsy Sports. Let's get him in here, ladies and gentlemen, and hear his story, because what a story it is. And as he joins me now, good evening to you, Sean. And well, what a race for yourself today. I mean, in the first couple of rounds this season, you've been fighting towards the bottom end of the top 5 in the GT3 Pro class, but here at Imola, you look to just be in the happiest space in that Ford Mustang, and by the end of it, taking second.
Oh, I've had a terrible start to the championship. First race of the season, I accidentally started from the pits, then did the same in the second race. So giving myself a kind of a handicap there, starting almost, 10, 20 seconds down from the pack both times. I think I ended up 5th in both those races, though. And then last week I was awful. I was about a second off the pace. So I changed tact. This week I thought I'd do the endurance race yesterday. So was that 2.4 hours? So I did that. Won that, so it's the first race I've won in GT3 for years, I think, and I just basically used that to push on today. And I was lucky enough that some of the other faster guys weren't racing today.
Well, maybe a bit of fortune your way, and like you say, already giving yourself a bit of a handicap to kick off the season. But coming into this round then, I mean, the Imola Circuit, it's always a good circuit for qualifying. You've got to qualify well here, otherwise you may find yourself struggling to make your way up the order as you went. Third place in qualifying. Looked so some good laps out there from yourself.
Yeah, faster than I've been all week in that qualifying session. I was running more fuel, obviously. We got the 4 laps instead of the 2 laps we have in officials, so that was a bit different. I wasn't sure how that would run, but it ran all right. I was happy though when I was in the race to run behind Kasper for the entire first stint. The plan was always going to be try and pit before him. If he pitted, pit with him, and then I'll just stick behind him, pick up third at the end. I knew that if I was pitting early, you get a massive run past anyone pitting after you on that pit straight, because you're starting from 80 kph from that pit lane. You're almost doing 200 kilometers an hour more than that by the time you get to them. So if you're lucky enough and you have a good outlap, you're able to squeeze through on them. I was fortunate that a GTP allowed me to kind of follow it through into T1, and then I kind of managed the pace for the rest of the race, really.
Well, very well managed, and I appreciate the overview, how you broke the race down. And just talking a little bit more about that in terms of you chasing after Kasper. I mean, it's Ford Mustang and Ford Mustang, and with Erik in the Audi just gradually pulling away, something tells me the race really was going to boil down between the two of you, who was going to be the one who would take second. How did it feel trying to maintain that closeness to him, particularly when the GTP traffic came through the first time?
I was conscious about losing that toe. I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to pick up the pace to Kasper once I'd lost that toe. I was fortunate that he got caught in traffic a couple of times. It was kind of yo-yoing though, because through some of the slower corners, I think I was quicker, particularly through 1 and 2. I think I was gaining 1 or 2 tenths off him every time, and then the chicane at the top of the hill as well, maybe a tenth, 2 tenths there. But the rest of the lap, he was quicker than me. So, as I said, it yo-yoed, and luckily, when I did fall out of the toe, I was able to close back in with the help of traffic. Then after the pits, for some reason, I managed to pull a 2-second gap within the first lap. No idea why. And it kind of stayed like that to the end of the race, really.
I see. And just with regards to that yo-yoing of the gap, I mean, when you came into the pits, we saw you running very close towards the end of your opening stint. Something tells me there was a thought that twitched in your brain, which said, you know what, I'm running this close, I might as well come in now and try and force that undercut, because otherwise I'm just going to be stuck here watching the rear end of that Mustang. Yeah,
I was never sure whether I'd have the pace to be quicker than Kasper throughout the course of a stint, but I knew if I was within a second, there's a chance for the undercut, particularly if he pitted straight after me, which he did. Then at the end of the race, I ran out of fuel pretty much across the line. Very lucky that Patrik came past in the GTP as I was heading down the start-finish straight. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have made the final lap.
Oh, goodness me. Well, that might have been a very different story if we'd had one more lap for yourselves. But coming out to the pit lane and just talking about that second stint, obviously leaping ahead, and we saw that jump ahead, although When you made the jump, I mean, we did have, as we looked on the blimp camera, we saw you charging down the straight with what was Kasper Brøckner making his way up the pit lane, and you had to go quite late on the brakes to get it done. Was there a part of you said, you know what, we'll do it now or it's never happening, or was it just sort of, no, I'm going for this, no hesitation, just pull the trigger?
No, I knew that he would be compromised by the GTP, so I was happy that he would have made space for that car anyway in front of me. And Kasper's a good driver. He would have seen a car following that GTP through anyway. And you never know how early or late a GTP is going to brake, particularly when they're on their inside, as they are. Those sausage curves will spin one of those cars around quite quickly. So I think Kasper was cautious enough to let the GTP through, and I kind of just took advantage of the space he gave.
Well, that's absolutely fair. And in taking that advantage and taking that second place, you didn't look back afterwards, albeit, of course, that concern about fuel, which you mentioned. And now after 4 rounds with drop score in play, it moves you to 4th place in the GT3 PRO Championship. You're right in the hunt for a top 3 as it stands. You're only 8 points off of Jack Barker, and you've got Nathan Anstis 2 points behind. On all reflection, yes, you're giving yourself a bit of a handicap, but does that sound positive?
Yeah, it does. I'm only in pro, I think, because I was second, I think, the last time he ran this championship, so it makes sense that I got moved up. Last time out, I was nowhere near the pace of the pro guys 6 months ago. I haven't driven the Mustangs since we stopped that championship last time around, so I'm really just happy finishing on the same lap as some of these guys. So to actually be in contention for any podium is just a bonus every week.
That's definitely one way to look at it. I think a very positive way to look at it, in the fact that learning week after week and getting close and, like you say, staying on the lead lap with some of these drivers in the GT3 class. And we've got a week's break now, what of it being the Easter season. But when we do return in 2 weeks' time, we stay in Italy, but we head to the Italian temple of speed that is Monza. How are you feeling for a trip to Monza?
Oh, I don't know yet. I'm looking at the Road America 500 first. So I'll give that a go next week. I think it's next week. And then after that, I'll see how Monza looks. It's a power circuit, so maybe the Mustang will do well. Who knows? I have never driven the Mustang there. So let's wait and see.
I will gladly look forward to seeing you attack Monza in the Mustang. Like you say, a power circuit could be the place for all those horses to go prancing to victory. But just before we do let you go, Sean, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I just want to say that my teammate Steve, really, he's done really well this season. He came into the team beginning of the year. I think he's picked up 2 or 3 podiums of the 4 races so far. A poor outing in Fuji because of the rain. It's a horrible race that was. But other than that, he's done really well. So well done to him.
Well, Sean, definitely a good thing to shout out for your teammate there, because we were talking about him a little bit earlier on the broadcast, the brilliant job he's been doing, and, well, great to have you reflect on that. But with that, we'll leave you to it, and indeed the NC Sports team to it. Congratulations on your result today, and we look forward to plenty more in the second half of the season. But until then, best of luck in what is the Road America 500, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at the Monza Grand Prix circuit.
Cheers, Paul.
So hearing it there from Sean Cranny-Swash, ladies and gentlemen, a very happy 117 GT3 Pro driver today, and really reflects on the fact that this season started off with a bit of a rough period, particularly in the opening couple of races, but it is gradually coming forward. But also respecting the fact some big names have been absent from the grid today, including the likes of Cy Anthony, and therefore he's had an opportunity to really jump into the space left behind by others, but also needing to give himself some credit. Everything absolutely hooking up today, and in the end taking a 3rd place in qualifying and going into the race, that confidence to chase after Kasper Brøckner, which we see on your screens right now, and knowing that as the race would go on, the gap would yo-yo, but his priority was to make sure the traffic, i.e. the LMP2s and GTPs coming through, wouldn't cause that gap to open up too much, and then he could go for the undercut in the pit stop, which he did, and successfully leapt ahead by simply realising that the driver pits first gains a major speed advantage when the leading driver then comes in subsequently. It was close, the traffic aid him a little bit, but in the end you've got to be in the right place at the right time to seize the opportunity, and that's exactly what Sean did. Albeit if there had been one more lap towards the end, it could have been a very different story by not having enough fuel to see that checkered flag, but still it wasn't to be that way today. And for Sean Cranny-Swash from NC Sports, we was one of 2 team members to gain a podium, the other being Steve Hughes, who he gave the shout out to right at the end there, and a great day for both Sean and also the team as a whole. But now coming on to our second interview, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard there from what was Sean Cranny Swash, but now we must come to what is our LMP2 class. And we're going to be hearing from class winner James Ibram. And what a brilliant day from him today as we do get ready to have him join me in the interview room. And well, we'll be hearing the story there of how he's carried on what is back-to-back victories over the last 2 rounds, including this one. And well, as we do bring him into the interview room, good evening to you once again, James. And well, this time only what was a week ago, we were talking about a surprise victory at Long Beach. But today, it looks like there were no surprises in store, albeit perhaps how some of the traffic worked out. We can talk about some surprises there. But it looks like today, things were cool, they were calm and in control for yourself to make it 2 wins out of 2.
Yeah, it was a good race. I would say, yeah, you're right. There were some traffic surprises and moments, but you can see a lot of them come sort of beforehand. Some of them I maybe could have done a little better to make it a little more comfy and cozy for myself. But yeah, the pace was there today. This is like one of the few weeks that I like to actually get some laps in officials as well. Imola is always one of my tracks that I always come out of the woodwork for. So I was quite prepared for this week. And yeah, I felt like the setup worked really well in these conditions today. It was a little bit colder than expected. It was about 10 degrees cooler than the sort of officials have been. So, but it was it was a strong performance today for sure.
Oh, without a doubt, it was a strong performance. And let's just talk a little bit about qualifying. So you mentioned having a bit more time to practice by comparison with perhaps previous rounds. But from the outset in qualifying, it really looked as though today here at Imola, you were here to do the damage early on and very quickly contesting what was the provisional pole times. And then suddenly with that final lap, just leaping into pole and not looking back.
But yeah, actually, I think I could have definitely done a little bit better. I left some time on the table. Again, my qualifying is it's okay. I think is the best way to put it. I definitely made a few mistakes in my final lap. Again, my third flying lap was actually the one that got me pole. And as soon as I realised that I couldn't be beaten, I just went straight into the pit lane. But yeah, it was solid enough to get me where I needed to be, because overtaking here is really, really difficult. Even if you've got quite a bit of extra pace over others, it can be really hard. You have to get a great exit out of the last corner and be within 3/10 to have even a chance at a sniff of an overtake. So it can be very hard to overtake here. So qualifying was very important to get right.
Definitely a huge emphasis on qualifying, like you say, and getting the job done there by a 10th over your teammate Emil Koopmans. Going into the race, obviously the GTPs dictated the pace, but by the end of the run down towards Tamburello on lap number 1, it already looked as though you'd settled into that lead quite nice and early. I have to imagine, was your plan perhaps to get as much gap as possible in the first few laps? Because knowing when the traffic falls at Imola, it could work to your advantage, it could work against you, it could do anything to your race.
Yeah, traffic is a real sort of deciding factor around here. Actually, early on, one of my biggest weaknesses is actually cold tyres. So I was really, really cautious in the early laps. But thankfully I had Emil behind me, so I knew he wasn't going to do anything or put any risky moves there. So it gave me the confidence just to ease the tyres in. Early on, I kept, I kept the gap, maintained it, was looking after tyres and fuel, and then I sort of realised that I could change tyres at the stop, so I decided to just go flat out and use them up, and that's when I started to build the gap up. But the traffic was actually probably a major factor in building that gap early on. I know Emil had a bit of a tough time getting past a couple of GT3s, which I think opened the gap by like 3 seconds at one point. So I think that was probably more the major factor, was just getting a bit of luck with traffic was really on my side.
Now, with a bit of fortune in the traffic, like you say, did that potentially influence the way you approach strategy at all? Because we did see for some drivers open up large gaps in their respective classes, but when they pit, they ended up pitting and coming out right in the thick of a whole mixture of cars of classes, and that cost them a lot of time. Did that influence perhaps the way you approach the strategy element?
Well, doing officials this week, nobody ever really gained anything by pitting early. So I kind of went with the same strategy of just go as long as possible. If it looks like I'm gonna, when it's like 1 or 2 laps to the end and I'm gonna get held up by a lot of GT3s or something, then I might box. But it just so happened that with their sort of 3 or 4 laps before my eventual stop, anyway, I had clear track. So it was just perfect timing that I happened to box when I did. I didn't have to do anything special. I just pit when I had fuel, well, no fuel left really.
Well, that's absolutely fair. Appreciate the analysis with regards to the pit stop strategy. And then going towards the end, of course, as the laps wind down, one of the things as a leader is you want to take your foot off the gas, but also you've got to be wary of the traffic. Were there any moments towards the end where you thought to yourself, you know what, I just don't want to put myself in any place right now where I can end up being caught up in an instant auto-30, make an instant my own doing? Because we know some drivers, I don't know if you're one of them, where if you take your foot off the throttle even slightly, like an Ayrton Senna, you end up making mistakes because you're not at that maximum concentration anymore.
Yeah, I was fully trying to push to get a lap in the 33s. I was very close. My optimal was a 33.9, and I was very close on a few occasions. But unfortunately, on the last lap, when I did have a clear track and a tow down the straight from Patrik, unfortunately, the tyres weren't there anymore. So I still set a 34.1, but it was slower than one of my times earlier, so I didn't quite have the tyres left. But I was really. I wasn't holding back at the end. I was trying to get that 33.
Oh goodness, well, absolutely fair play to you. And well, double checking what is the record of results coming out of this round. I should say, really, you've made it 3 out of 3 in the last 3 races, 3 victories back to back. And it sets you up with a brilliant amount of momentum going into the mid-season break. When you reflect on it, the opening 4 rounds, I mean, you've come alive after Algarve, and it doesn't look as though you're looking back. Is this what we can expect of you going into the second half of the season? Dominance once more?
Well, I'd love to say yes, but you never really know. I mean, the last few tracks, particularly Imola is very strong for me. Fuji's another one that's fairly strong for me as well. So I don't know where we're going to next.
Monza.
Monza, oh yeah, that's not a particularly great one for me, to be honest. So, if I can come away with a podium there, I think I'll be happy on Monza. So, I think Øystein and Helder will definitely be quicker than me there. Or at least maybe they are, maybe not. Who knows? I don't know how they find the Monza themselves, but for me, Monza's definitely one of my weaker tracks. For a track that's so simple, or relatively simple, it's one that I find particularly difficult to extract any pace out of. So I don't expect to be fighting for the win at Monza.
Well, absolutely fair. And, well, honesty is always appreciated, but we'll still look forward to seeing you chase a podium at Monza, if nothing else. But just before we do let you go, James, have you got anything... Well, first I should ask, have you got anything planned during the downtime? Can we expect you on the Road America 500, for example?
No, I don't think so. I think next weekend I'm going to take a little bit of a break from the sim because I think it's the end of ARL and it's a break from this league. So I think it'll be nice to just have a weekend of sort of relaxing and away from the computer screens at least. So that'll be nice. Yeah, no real plans to do any of the special events. I don't think I even own those 2 cars for the Road America 500. So. And I have no plans of buying them. I don't think I'd ever get enough use out of them to be worth it.
Well, that's absolutely fair. And a bit of downtime is always welcome. I think it's something we should all do a little bit more of. I think we all forget that we sometimes need to rest. And just before I do let you go, James, I have to always ask, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out. Well, first of all, to Emil for a cracking qualifying lap. That really set him up well for the race and put him between me and Helder, which was nice. And obviously Øystein as well. And obviously to the team, Effect Simulations. So head to effectsimulations.com for all your sim racing requirements. and I've done my my sponsorship requirements there. So yeah, we're all good. And you as well, Paul, for obviously a great broadcast, which I'm looking forward to watching back.
Well, thank you, James. Well, with that, I should say a big thank you to you for joining me in the interview room. Well done on another victory to your tally. That's 3 in 4 rounds. And we look forward to seeing you return in 2 weeks' time to see if you can continue the run of podiums at a minimum, if not go for what would be another win. But until then, have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you at Monza.
Yep, cheers. You as well, Paul. Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we heard there from James Ibram, the Effect Simulations Club Sport driver, who today really was on it from the outset in qualifying. And as you may remember in his post-round interview from what was Long Beach, he did mention in that interview that this was one of those circuits that he did feel quite strongly at and were immediately demonstrating that strength. But making a passing mention there to what was Emil Koopmans with that brilliant qualifying lap that really made James had to dig deep to try and take the pole position back, and he did so by a 1/10.5. And well, after taking that pole and that run down towards turns 2 and 3 on the open lap for what was our 903 driver, at that point onwards it was all about, just opening the gap as much as humanly possible and not looking back in preparation for the traffic. I mentioned there, some of the traffic felt very kindly to him and really enabled him to open up more of a gap, and we're working out this time. But sometimes the traffic gives, sometimes the traffic takes. But in the end, all he took was a lot of a calm approach. He made his way on past traffic, as we see here an example as he passed what was one of our GT3 PRO drivers, that being Tom Weston. And well, for James Ibram, it really was a race that he put in full control from start to finish. Not setting his hopes high for Monza when we do return after a 2-week break, but feeling happy with today the fact it wasn't luck that was on his side in order to enable him to take victory, but this was a win that he really took control of, and will aim for a podium at Monza. That's going to be his target, and wondering where exactly his fortunes will favour him in that second half of the season. Well, I get the feeling he might be just being a little bit modest and playing things down at the moment, and many a driver won't want to get too far ahead going into the mid-season break, but James Ibram definitely one of the early favourites in the LMP2 Championship, and understandably a deserved favourite given the run of form. But now coming on to our final interview, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to be talking to Matt Edmondson very shortly, as we'll be hearing his perspective on what has been a rather quiet day of racing today in the GT3 AM class, and we'll get a word from him very shortly as he joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Matt, and well, what a day from yourself today. Second place in the GT3 AM class after a third place in qualifying, and a relatively quiet race at that. Not quite on the pace to chase down James Foster, but on enough pace to make sure the likes of Steve Hughes and Satinder Deensa weren't able to get close. How was it for you?
I mean, you've pretty much summed it up. It was very much other than sort of the first few laps. After that, it became just quite a sort of lonely race. James had more pace just in general than me, so I couldn't catch him, and a lot of the gap changes was all down to the traffic. And I think Steve got a bit screwed by some of the traffic as well, like in comparison to myself. So I think, like, had he been able to keep up in terms of the traffic, I think there would have been a good battle there. But yeah, it was very much a sort of just driving round for 45 minutes in a lot of that. So
Well, absolutely fair. Well, sometimes races have to be less entertaining for you as a driver, but still big points to be grabbed and key points. We'll come on to the championship points a little bit later. But let's talk a bit about qualifying firstly. Qualifying, we've heard from our previous 2 interviews, very important here at Imola. You took third place in qualifying. Something tells me you would have been quite happy with that, but perhaps there was a little bit more in the tank?
yeah, there was a 42 in there. But after the first lap I did was like a 42. Unfortunately, I got one of the classic Imola 1Xs, so I would have probably been P2. I would had no answer to James in qualifying, so there could have been a little bit more, but I'll take a P3 because if it's after that first lap and it just sort of didn't quite hook together after that, I'll take where I got.
Well, that's absolutely fair, and appreciate the honesty with regards to qualifying and coming into the race. Now, what's quite interesting with the way the GT3s lined up was James Foster on pole, but with the likes of Daniel Pays and Nathan Anstis between yourselves. And well, Daniel Pays, of course, being the second place GT3 AM driver, very quickly spinning out in the early stages, but you did have some GT3 pros who were out of position. How were those opening couple laps for you? Because I get the feeling it was sort of, right, I know I've got to chase down Pays as a minimum if I can't catch Foster, but I've also got to clear some pro drivers who they might get in the way if I don't get past them sooner rather than later.
It certainly was a bit of a mix. I was hoping to basically just hang on to the coattails of Nathan throughout the first stint, because from the first few laps it looked like that myself, Pays, Stephen and Nathan were all about similar-ish paces, so if I could hold on to there and just try and find an opening, then that would have been ideal. James wasn't too far up the road, but then with Pays spinning out sort of just as the traffic actually appeared, that kind of that was the start of the separation. On the first lap I got a slow down after the chicane, so I had to serve that, which let Stephen by and managed to get back past him. But yeah, it was a weird sort of, the traffic catching so quickly kind of spread us out and limited the racing quite quickly. So
well, the field spreading out and then the traffic intervened, and it became a bit of an isolated race for yourself, and indeed a number of drivers. But at that point, in terms of working out your strategy, we did see a lot of GT3 drivers seemingly try to go as long as possible in their fuel tanks, perhaps just to give themselves breathing room. Was that always perhaps your plan, just to run until the fuel tank went dry, or did you have a bit of a different strategy in mind?
I was keeping the options open, but with the high fuel burn round here is like immense. Like I put in about 51 litres of fuel, so you're going towards the end of the tank as is, and it's where you don't want to come out in the middle of the prototype traffic, because that will, like, or with a prototype coming up your backside, because that'll slow you down. I was keeping an eye on all the sort of relatives for things, and it just seemed a better option to go long, because it was very likely that the lead prototypes in both the classes would likely like jump me while I was in the pit stop, so that should hopefully then reduce any time loss from them overtaking, just because if you went too early and got like stuck, it would hurt you a lot more around here, just because of like how difficult it just in general is to overtake. So I think I sort of got it right in terms of that, because I came out sort of with a bit of room. I think, and I seemed to gain quite a bit of time on the likes of Stephen in the pit stop, so I think he may have got a bit sort of stuck in the proto traffic because he pitted earlier than I did.
I see. And with that change, the differences in strategy then, a bit of time going the way of what was in that battle between yourself and Steve, as in Steve Hughes, were you a bit worried perhaps towards the closing stage of the race that you might get a bit close in that Ford Mustang, or was it, okay, once things return to normal, you know what, I can just manage this gap all the way to the end?
I had it in the back of my mind that he was potentially going to get closer. The car felt awful at the back end of both stints. I think in general I'm a little bit harder on the tyres, and somewhere around here, especially at the hairpin, you can scrub your tyres like so easily, and I think I took quite a lot of life out of them earlier in the stints, so that meant that I was kind of hanging on for dear life towards the end. So I think I got a bit lucky with some of the traffic, but otherwise I think Stephen would have been like right there with me, pushing me all the way to the end.
Oh, absolutely fair there. And it didn't quite work out for Steve, but it worked out for yourself. And it means now coming out of this round and into the mid-season break, you've had a mixture of results since the start of the season, including a very difficult day at what was Algarve, and of course missing the race at what was round number 3, Long Beach. It means you sit 6th in the championship, albeit you're only 13 points off a championship leader, Rob Windsor, and a lot of drivers seem to be struggling at the moment or having mixed form. How do you feel now going into the break? Do you feel as though this is a championship that's well and wide open for yourself, or is there a lot of work to do?
I think that first round at the Algarve might potentially like dampen any chances I've got. If I have to miss another round due to work, that becomes my second would be my second drop score. So that 13 points or 12, I think it was, will really hurt. But yeah, it's an interesting one because I think the top guys in AM are quite close. There's at least 7 or 8 guys that can really sort of on a good day challenge for that win. And a lot of it will come down to circumstances with traffic, things like that. Like if you look at, say, Fuji, the choice between going onto dries or wets at the start, some people tried the dries, it didn't work for them, some it did. Like there's such a, I think, quite a wide variety that I think this is going to go down to the wire this season. There's going to be probably at least 3 or 4 right up until the last couple of rounds, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting season because we've got quite a different variety of tracks left on the calendar, which is going to be good because I think some cars are going to be better at others, and we've got a bit of a mixture of cars that can, in the AM Championship, that can challenge for it.
Well, absolutely fair, and I would be inclined to agree with you. Given how close it is, it's anybody's game at the moment, and like you say, a whole host of drivers, yourself included, that can challenge for it. And obviously, when we do return in 2 weeks' time, we return at the Italian Temple of Speed that is Monza. How are you feeling your chances are going to be for Monza?
Ooh, it's going to be an interesting one. It's a place that requires a lot of power, so the Mustangs of the likes of Pace and Hughes are going to probably be very strong there. But there's a 36% chance of rain. So it's going to be an interesting one. The last time we went to Monza, I think I can remember properly, was in the GT3 League where it was completely raining, and that was an interesting experience just because of going down into turn 1 with the pit exit line. If you messed up on that, you weren't stopping. So if it does rain, I think it's going to be a very interesting race, because if it goes like Fuji and wet to dry or dry to wet, you're going to have to make a choice between having a good car in the wet or a good car in the dry, and sacrificing some top speed in the wet. Yeah, I think there's going to be quite a mixture there. So I think it's going to be an interesting round.
Oh, I would 100% agree with you. We look forward to seeing how you play your role in what will be a very challenging round, or an interesting round, like you say, when we do come back to the racing. But just before I do let you go, Matt, as always, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Just a shout out to all my teammates in the UKSR teams. Everyone's putting in the work and doing well. Shout out to the admins and the stewards for giving up their time to organise and steward. Big thanks to yourself for the broadcast, as always, and an amazing job you do. And a final shout out to James, because he drove really well today and he absolutely deserved the win.
Oh, absolutely a fair play to yourself, Matt. Applauding our race winner in the GT3 class, James Foster, and also credit where it's due to yourself for a brilliant drive to second. Thank you for joining me in the interview room once again. Well done your performance today, and we look forward to plenty more in the second half of the season. But enjoy the mid-season break, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. So hearing there from Matt Edmondson, a very honest and also very balanced perspective from Matt Edmondson from UK Sim Racing Button. Indeed, if anything, actually channeling a bit of the attitude from Jenson Button, after whom the team is named. In fact, talking about the fact there, felt as though there was a bit more on the table in qualifying, but still, all things considered, happy with a third place on the GT3 AM grid. And his race really boiling down to looking to try and stabilise things in the early stages and then go hunting after Daniel Pace first and foremost, and potentially trying to close the gap to James Foster. But with Pace having an early incident that saw him spin out of second place, it fell to Matt Edmondson, and Steve Hughes would give chase. Foster was too far away, and in the end it would be Edmondson just focusing on finishing second and making sure Hughes never got close. After the pit stop, he kept his options open with regards to when he chose to pit. He noticed that Hughes was getting a little bit closer, but traffic fell Unfortunately, in the way of Hughes and out of the way of Matt Edmondson. And for Matt, it was a second place in the end that was just going to gradually come to him over the distance. And the McLaren driver, all things considered, there's been some highs, there's been some lows so far in the opening 4 rounds of the season, but this is definitely a high. And looking forward to the challenge ahead in the GT AM Championship with the best part of 6, if not more drivers, all right in the hunt currently. We'll come on to that shortly in terms of exactly how the provisional standings stand after 4 rounds. But definitely right now, the GT3 AM driver, knowing there's going to be a tough time ahead and he's ready for the challenge, starting of course at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews. And thank you to our 3 drivers who joined me this evening for interviews. We just heard from GT3 AM runner-up today of Matt Edmondson for UK Sim Racing Button. Before that, we heard from our 3-time LMP2 winner as he continues his win streak of James Ibram for Effect Simulations Club Sport. And we started off, of course, from our GT3 Pro class, our runner-up from today in the class, and the first-time podium finisher in the class, Anti Sports' Sean Cranley-Swash. Well done to all 3 of them for their performances, and thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room. But now, of course, we do have the question of the class standings after 4 rounds. And these are the provisional standings, of course, ladies and gentlemen, subject to any Sure's inquiries as we do bring them on to screen for you. And, well, there we can see, start off with the GTP class. And after what has been the best part of 4 rounds, it is the way being led by none other than Patrik Thomsen for Williams Sim Racing Academy, and leading the way there by the best part now of what is 17 points over Austin William Campbell. And that confidence is going to be growing as time goes on for what is our leader in the class. In the fact, everything seems to be clicking together. But then again, as Patrik Thomsen charges his way from round to round, he knows he'll not take anything for granted, because at any point his rivals could close the gap. And if they are able to do so, well, the challenge may just get that little bit tougher as we go deeper and deeper into the season. For Austin William Campbell, it's going to be a question for the Effect Simulations Club Sport driver of whether he can try to maintain that gap to what is Joshua Wilson, his teammate from the sister Effect Simulations team, and conversely close the gap down to the class leader, albeit it does look as though Patrik Thomsen right now is trying to staple himself to that class lead as much as he possibly can, but anything's possible over the distance and anything can happen before they do get to that checkered flag. Thomas Cope, who hasn't been on the grid what's been the last 2 rounds, well, those will become his effective drop scores, and therefore we are hoping, or at least expecting, that he will be returning as of round number 5 and ready to take on the hunt in the Porsche 963 and seeing what he's going to be able to do, albeit with 54 points, literally on the same points now as Ryan Davies and Nathan Foster, and only ahead based on result count back. And well, that is going to be very tasty there. Should Cope return and not be able to re-find the momentum that he had in the early stage of the season? Could he find himself under major pressure and suddenly fighting for the 4th place spot rather than fighting for what would be the top 3? Well, from him, and coming on to what is then outside of the top 6, you have a further what is 4 points behind the trio of Ryan Moles, Matthew Sheraton and John Williams. And with Williams missing the opening 2 rounds, he'll be looking to make sure the points continue to come his way and doing well so far, having finished 4th in what was round number 3 and now a 3rd place in round number 4. Well, at Monza, surely he's got to finish 2nd as a minimum in order to maintain that momentum and pace. We look forward to seeing that from the Effect Simulations driver. But also there, we do see Darren Orkett for Racing Forces, who's today just couldn't get the car stopped the way he wanted it to. But results could have been very different than chasing the podium, and I suspect he will be chasing it once again when we do go to Monza. Amit Rajit Ghosh was not on the grid today, unfortunately due to personal circumstances, but we hope all his real-life rally driving is going well, and I'm sure we'll give you an update on that in 2 weeks' time. He's ahead of Joe Newman by 2 points. And it's Andreas Nordenhoff, Zander Hill, and Haroldus Jotatus who complete those points on the standings. In fact, let's not forget Sam Sherwood as well. That'd be rude of us too. He's currently in 16th. And then we have John Eddowes yet to score any points. Coming on to the LMP2 class, and here we can see James Ibram with those 3 wins in a row now extends his lead to the best part of what is 8 points there for Effect Simulations Club Sport over his carbon sister team rival of Øystein Herfjord. Can anybody stop Ibram? Well, he feels as though Monza could be where his run of victories comes to a pause, and Øystein Herfjord will be the one who'll want to try and make sure that he's there to take the victory off of him. Helder Gonçalves didn't have a happy day in the office today. It becomes his first drop score of the season here at Imola, but the Tractics Racing Racing driver through everything at today, and well, even when his chips were down, he didn't let it turn it into a frown. Indeed, I think he was smiling all the way in terms of wanting to go battling, and he's going to be one to watch out for in the second half of the season, as will Ben Cullen, who really shone through today after a great result at Long Beach. Wasn't quite able to match that of a podium today, but the Effect Simulations driver there still well in the hunt and still a championship contender, no doubt about it. And the same can be said for Emil Koopmans, who after that 0 score at the start of the season and a bit of a middling form at Long Beach, he's been back on the podium today for Effect Simulations Club Sport after a brilliant qualifying lap, but wasn't able to convert it into a second place finish, unfortunately. And then we've got Tom Farr in 6th place, down 70 points, 5 behind the top 5, but 6 ahead of Ryan Walker as he continues to try and chase down what will be a top 5 finish in the season. Speaking of Ryan Walker, what a great day from him today in order to chase what was that 5th place finish. Gutted, I think, not to finish 4th, but still, what an effort from the Altitude 3M eSport driver. And then we do have Simon Bamber, James Acklam, and Justus Stakiokas completing the LMP2 at top 10. Dan Blackwell and Brandon Hay yet to score any points. Then coming on to the GT3 classes, starting with the GT3 Pro class, and here we can see it. Kasper Brøckner leading the way by 4 points over Cy Anthony. Cy Anthony not on the grid today, and Kasper Brøckner essentially locking in this round as his initial drop score potentially. Or we've got a lot of rounds to go, and two drop scores come the end of our 9 rounds, so still those could be updated as time goes on. But Kasper Brøckner definitely laying down the foundations with a 4-point advantage. Jack Barker returns to 3rd place for Made for Racing, but knowing right now the pace doesn't seem to be there from the last 2 rounds. Long Beach went astray, and Imola proving to be a bit of a jinx circuit as well, and he's got Sean Cranny Swash a further 8 points behind, closing rapidly. From the NC Sports driver in P4, it's Nathan Anstis who completes your top 5, and the UK Sim Racing Irvine driver today, putting on some brilliant battling, but not quite chasing the podium, which he would have liked to have done. But look at that consistency, 22 points scored across what is 3 out of the 4 rounds, so 3 5th place finishes, and then 1 6th place finish. And if you can get those points a little bit higher, could he become a contender? Well, Erik Røseth is definitely becoming a contender, because whilst he's down in 6th on 64 points, joint with Darren Sharples, 2 wins, 2 perfect scores so far, and already having 2 0 scores. So Røseth knows he can't afford to drop any points from this point onwards if he wants to chase the championship, but he's already making a big statement. And well, if he goes to Monza and makes it 3 out of 3, he'll very quickly be making his way into that top 3, and soon after, could he be taking the championship lead by the end of round 6 potentially? We'll have to see. Darren Sharple sits in 7th for Old Dudes in Cars in a bit of a bruising day today, ahead of Tom Weston, who managed to make his way onto the podium with late misfortune for Kasper Brøckner, but still the DDK Racing Team driver getting some solid points on the board after having taken part in 2 rounds out of 4 so far. Then we do have Andy Archer ahead of Christian Maltrek, who unfortunately couldn't make it onto the grid today. P11 is Andrew Fairley, and it's Jack Osborne with the last of our points to the table, with no points for Matthew Morris, Josh Boot, or Jeff Griffiths. Then coming to the GT3 AM class, and here we can see in the GT3 AM standings, Rob Windsor is now jointly leading alongside James Foster. How the tables have turned for Windsor, who was looking very strong in the opening 2 rounds in the mixed conditions, but in more stable conditions, it is James Foster who has risen up the ranks and taken his first ever, and let me just double check if I've got this right, ladies and gentlemen, but I do believe it's his first ever league win in what is any form of league on a simulator, and James Foster taking his first league win today. Congratulations to him on that one. And now levelling the score at the top of the field. But much like Matt Edmonds said in his interview, look at the run from 1st all the way to 6th. It's only 13 points separating Rob Windsor, James Foster, James Conley, Steve Hughes, Richard Jones and Matt Edmondson. Jones wasn't on the grid today, and we do know the slow and steady racing driver needs to regroup after a difficult run of form at Fuji, and indeed Long Beach is where he regrouped, but he wants to push higher. And we've also seen Matt Edmondson today. Sonny picking up another great performance to a podium. Steve Hughes also in the mix with consistency rewarding him, and James Conley on a bit of a rebound at the moment after the victory at Long Beach, seeming to fall back down the order. But any of these 6 drivers could be contenders, and that's before you think about Daniel Pace for Old Dudes in Cars, who had a lot of pace here today at Imola, but an early spin took him away from the opportunity to take the win, or at least finish on that podium. And well, from him on 58 points, there's a further 2 to Simon Hartley, the DWR Sim Coach Setups driver, enjoying the racing today, getting stuck in the thick of it, but not scoring the points, and therefore right now chasing the top 5 finish as best he can, ahead of John Davies, Alex Brown, Satinder Deensa and Michael Meyer, and yet score any points, Shaminda Deensa and Aaron Beaver. But that is a recap of all of our standings, ladies and gentlemen, provisionally after 4 rounds of racing and going into our mid-season break. So with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. And thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of how you can be on the grid in this series or other series that we've got upcoming over the course of this year, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you check out our official website. That's uksimracing.co.uk. But if you don't want to go to our website for all the details on how you can become part of the community or even join the official Discord, which is the beating heart of the community, perhaps if you're sat there as more of a social media person, well, you can, of course, follow us on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements from UK Sim Racing. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our title sponsor for this season, and that, of course, is the Virtual Racing School, or VRS, the website being vrs.racing. And established in 2016, Virtual Racing School aims to help sim racers get faster through the provision of top-tier software and hardware which draws upon the knowledge and experience of both real-life racing drivers and sim racing professionals. A VRS subscription, extremely popular with sim racers around the world, provides an intuitive solution for combining data analysis and coaching which may be used by racers at all levels to take their racing to the highest level. Meanwhile, the VRS Direct Force Pro line of wheelbases and pedals offers the cutting edge in sim racing hardware as used by more professional sim racers and real-life racing drivers than any other brand in the world, including Formula One sensation Oscar Piastri. So if you want to get faster, be sure to head to vrs.racing today to find out more. That website again, vrs.racing. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we now need to turn our attention to the fact we've got a mid-season break, but do not fret. We will be back for the racing in 2 weeks' time on what will be Sunday, the 4th of May 2025. But due to scheduling, we'll be bringing all the racing from the Monza Grand Prix circuit as if it were live and a post-round broadcast on Monday, the 5th of May. You'll have to be there to see how the story continues, because in the GTP cars, it looks though nobody can stop Patrik Thomsen. Although saying that, I get the feeling Austin William Campbell is closing the gap very gradually, but can he close it in time? In the LMP2 cars, can anybody curb the momentum of James Ibram, or will he make it what will be 4 wins out of 5 in the season at Monza? And meanwhile, in the GT3 classes, well, GT3 PRO, it seems though Erik Røseth is on the rise, but it's Kasper Brøckner who's trying to hold on to the very top of the standings. And elsewhere, in what is the GT3 AM class, it's a 6-way fight that's headed by the combination of Rob Windsor and also James Foster. But with Foster taking his first ever league win at Imola, you can imagine he'd like to make it back-to-back wins at Monza. Well, for how all those questions are going to be answered, at least we start to get the answers, you'll have to tune in for round 5 2 weeks from now on Monday the 5th of May. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a happy Easter, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.